When a crime lord's hand trembles during a tango, someone always dies. Luca DeSantis had never shown weakness until the night he pulled a humiliated dancer into his arms, and the entire underworld watched his fingers shake against her spine. That single moment of vulnerability sparked a war that would burn through betrayal, blood, and bullets. Because in a world where power is everything, the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's trust. And Mira Vance was about to learn that surviving in the shadows means dancing between salvation and destruction, one deadly step at a time. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story reaches. Now, let's begin. The chandeliers in the Montrose Grand Ballroom cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Mira Vance knew this because she'd calculated it during her third hour of standing against the wall, watching wealthy strangers pretend to enjoy each other's company while a string quartet played music that sounded like expensive boredom. She wasn't supposed to be calculating anything. She was supposed to be decorative. The tango dancers are ambiance, her manager had explained that morning, adjusting Mira's red dress with the kind of rough efficiency that suggested he'd dressed mannequins before. You stand there, you look elegant, and if someone requests a demonstration, you dance. You don't talk to the guests unless they talk to you first. You definitely don't eat the canapes, got it? Mira had gotten it. Mira. She'd been getting it for 3 years now, ever since her professional dance career had collapsed under the weight of an injury and some spectacularly bad financial decisions. Hired entertainment at private events paid the rent. It kept her in dance shoes. It wasn't the stage she'd dreamed of, but it was a stage nonetheless. The ballroom was full of people who moved like they owned the air they breathed. Women in gowns that cost more than Mira's car. Men in suits tailored so precisely they looked like weapons. The event was some kind of charity gala. At least, that's what the invitation had called it. But Mira had worked enough of these things to recognize the real purpose. This was a gathering of power, money and influence circling each other like sharks, making deals in the spaces between small talk. She'd been hired along with 3 other dancers. They were scattered throughout the room, each positioned near a different wall, each wearing a variation of the same crimson dress. Living decorations, elegant props. Mira had perfected the art of looking engaged while thinking about something else entirely. Tonight, she was mentally reviewing the choreography for a showcase she was preparing. A real performance, the kind she actually cared about. The showcase wouldn't pay much, but it would be hers. Her vision, her movement, her... "You're the tango girl, right?" Mira's attention snapped back to the present. A man in his 50s stood in front of her, holding a champagne flute and wearing the kind of smile that made her spine straighten defensively. "I'm one of the dancers, yes," she said, keeping her voice professionally pleasant. "My wife loves tango." He gestured vaguely toward a woman across the room who wasn't looking in their direction. "Thinks it's romantic. Me? I think it's just an excuse for people to grab each other in public." He laughed at his own joke. "You any good?" "I do my best." "That's not what I asked." He stepped closer, and Mira caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with too much alcohol. "I asked if you're any good because I'm thinking about requesting a demonstration, but I don't want to waste everyone's time if you're just going to stumble around up there." Mira's smile didn't waver. "I trained professionally for 8 years before working private events. I promise you won't be disappointed." 8 years, huh?" His eyes traveled down her dress and back up in a way that made her want to shower. "That's a long time to end up serving drinks and dancing for tips." "I'm not serving drinks," Mira said quietly. "And we don't accept tips." "Everyone accepts tips, sweetheart. It's just a matter of price." The words hung in the air between them, ugly and deliberate. Mira felt her face heat, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd dealt with worse. There was an art to shutting down men like this without causing a scene, a delicate balance of politeness and distance that usually worked. Usually. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she started, but he cut her off. "No misunderstanding. I'm saying you look like you could use some extra cash, and I'm saying I'd be willing to provide it. In exchange for nothing." The voice came from behind Mira, low and controlled, with the kind of quiet authority that made the drunk man's face go pale. Mira turned. The man standing there was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair and darker eyes. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, and somehow looked more dangerous than elegant. He wasn't particularly bulky, but he carried himself with the kind of contained stillness that suggested violence was always an option, just never the first one. Mr. DeSantis, the drunk man stammered. I was just leaving, the man said. You were just leaving. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even really a suggestion. It was a fact, delivered with such calm certainty that the drunk man actually took a step backward. Of course. Yes. I apologize if... Don't apologize to me. The dark-eyed man's gaze didn't move from the drunk man's face. Apologize to her. The drunk man turned to Mira, his face now completely drained of color. I'm sorry. I was out of line. It won't happen again. It won't, the dark-eyed man agreed. Because you're going to go collect your wife, make a generous donation to whatever charity this circus is pretending to support, and then leave. Quietly. The drunk man nodded rapidly and disappeared into the crowd so quickly he nearly knocked over a waiter. Mira found herself alone with her unexpected defender, very aware of the attention they were drawing from nearby guests. People were trying not to stare while absolutely staring. Thank you, she said carefully, though I had the situation under control. I'm sure you did. His voice was still low, still controlled, but there was something almost amused in it now. You were handling it with impressive restraint. I simply didn't feel like watching you have to. And you are? Luca DeSantis. He said it like it should mean something. It did. Mira had heard the name before, though never in any context that made her feel comfortable. DeSantis, one of the city's most powerful families, the kind of power that didn't come from legitimate business, though they certainly owned plenty of that too, the kind of power that made drunk men go pale and sober very quickly. Mira Vance, she offered, because it seemed rude not to introduce herself after he'd just defended her honor, or whatever that had been. I know. That caught her off guard. You know? I asked who the dancers were when I arrived. His eyes held hers, and Mira realized they were an unusual shade of brown, almost black in the chandelier light. Your manager said you were the best, that you'd trained professionally, that you could make tango look the way it's supposed to look. My manager oversells. Does he? Before Mira could answer, a woman's voice cut through the space between them like a knife through silk. Luca, darling, I didn't realize you were slumming with the help tonight. The woman who appeared at Luca's elbow was stunning in the way that very rich, very dangerous women often are. Mid-40s, perfectly maintained, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than Mira's annual rent. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Isabella, Luca said, his tone cooling by several degrees. I didn't realize you were invited. I invited myself. You know how I hate missing a good party. Miss Isabella's eyes moved to Mira, assessing and dismissing in one smooth motion. And who is this? One of tonight's decorations? A guest, Luca said. Really? Isabella's smile widened. How interesting. I wasn't aware we were inviting the entertainment to mingle with actual attendees, though I suppose standards have dropped since the Castellanos started running these events. Mira felt the insult land, but kept her expression neutral. She'd dealt with women like Isabella before, too. Rich women who viewed anyone in a service position as fundamentally less human. If you'll excuse me, Mira said quietly, I should get back to... Dancing, Luca interrupted. You should get back to dancing. He offered his hand. The ballroom seemed to pause. Mira could feel the weight of 100 eyes turning toward them. I don't think that's... She started. Dance with me before I lose my temper. It wasn't a request. It wasn't even really a command. It was something else entirely. A warning, maybe, or a challenge. His hand remained extended, steady, and certain. Every instinct Mira had told her to refuse, to politely decline, to step back, to remember her place in this world of people who owned things and people who were owned. But there was something in Luca DeSantis' eyes that stopped her. Not kindness, exactly. Not even warmth, but a kind of recognition that felt uncomfortably intimate. Mira took his hand. The orchestra, as if on cue, shifted into a tango. Luca led her to the center of the ballroom floor, and the crowd parted like water. Mira was intensely aware of every eye on them, every whispered conversation pausing, every judgment being formed. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly as they took their positions. "Yes," Luca said. "I do." His hand settled against her back, and the music began in earnest. Mira had danced tango with dozens of partners over the years. She knew the steps, the rhythms, the subtle communication of pressure and release that made the dance work. But dancing with Luca DeSantis was different. He led with absolute authority, but there was nothing aggressive about it. Every step was precise, controlled, perfectly timed. He guided her through the movements with such certainty that Mira found herself responding instinctively, her body remembering the choreography it had learned years ago. They moved across the marble floor in silence, the only sound the sharp click of Mira's heels and the orchestra's rising crescendo. Luca's hand against her back was firm, steady, completely in command. And then Mira felt it, a tremor. So slight she almost missed it, his fingers against her spine trembling for just a fraction of a second before steadying again. She looked up at his face. His expression was perfectly composed, almost mask-like in its calm. But his eyes, there was something in his eyes that looked like pain. Old pain, carefully contained but never quite hidden. The music swelled toward its conclusion, and Luca spun her out and back in one smooth motion. The crowd applauded as they came to a stop, Mira still held in the final position, Luca's face inches from hers. "Thank you," he said quietly, for her ears only. "For what?" "For not stepping back." He released her then, stepping away with a slight nod. The crowd pressed in around him immediately, people seeking his attention, his approval, his time. Luca DeSantis was clearly someone important, someone powerful, someone who mattered in whatever complex hierarchy governed this world. Mira slipped back toward the wall, her heart still pounding from the dance. Her manager appeared at her elbow, eyes wide. "What the hell was that?" he hissed. "He asked me to dance." "Luca DeSantis doesn't just ask people to dance. Do you have any idea who he is?" "I'm getting a clearer picture," Mira admitted. "He's one of the most dangerous men in this city. He owns half the businesses downtown, and the other half pay him protection. The manager paused, lowering his voice even further. "He's not someone you want to get involved with. I danced with him. I didn't marry him." In this world, there's not always a difference. Before Mira could respond, her phone buzzed in the small clutch she'd been allowed to keep. She pulled it out, expecting a text from her roommate, or maybe a reminder about tomorrow's rehearsal. Instead, she found a message from a number she didn't recognize. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., 1247, Harbor Street. Come alone." Mira stared at the message, her stomach tightening with something that felt suspiciously like fear. "Everything okay?" her manager asked. "Fine," Mira lied, slipping the phone back into her clutch. "Everything's fine." But as she looked across the ballroom and caught Luca DeSantis watching her from across the room, his dark eyes unreadable, Mira knew that was absolutely not true. Nothing about tonight had been fine, and tomorrow was going to be even worse. The address led to a warehouse district near the waterfront, the kind of neighborhood where legitimate businesses went to die and illegitimate ones went to thrive. Mira sat in her aging Honda Civic at 9:55 a.m., staring at the building that matched the number from the text. 1247 Harbor Street was a converted warehouse, red brick and industrial windows, with no sign indicating what went on inside. The surrounding buildings were a mix of auto repair shops, storage facilities, and at least one business that advertised import-export with the kind of vagueness that suggested the imports and exports were probably illegal. Mira had no idea what she was doing here. She told herself all morning that she wasn't going to come, that showing up to a mysterious address sent by an unknown number was the kind of decision that got people killed in crime procedurals, that she had rehearsal this afternoon and bills to pay, and a life that didn't include getting involved with dangerous men in expensive suits. And yet here she was, parked outside a warehouse 5 minutes early. At exactly 10 a.m., the main door opened and a man stepped out. Not Luca, someone younger, built like a boxer, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. He looked directly at Mira's car and gestured for her to come inside. Mira's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was the moment. The last chance to start the car, drive away, and pretend last night had never happened. Go back to her life of hired performances and carefully managed obscurity. Instead, she got out of the car. The man at the door didn't introduce himself. He simply held the door open and gestured toward a freight elevator at the back of the first floor space. The warehouse interior was surprisingly clean. Concrete floors swept spotless, exposed brick walls, some kind of office furniture visible in a loft area above. Mira stepped into the elevator. The man pressed the button for the third floor and then stepped out, leaving her alone as the doors closed. The elevator rose with a mechanical groan that did nothing to calm Mira's nerves. When the doors opened, she found herself in a space that was part apartment, part office, and part something else entirely. Large windows overlooked the waterfront, expensive furniture arranged with casual precision, and in the center of the room, a clear hardwood floor that could only be for one purpose: dancing. Luca DeSantis stood near one of the windows, his back to the elevator, looking out at the gray water of the harbor. He was dressed more casually than last night, dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, but he still carried that same contained stillness, that sense of controlled power held just barely in check. "You came," he said without turning around. "You sent a cryptic message to my personal phone. How did you get my number?" "I asked for it." "From who?" "Does it matter?" Now he turned to face her, and Mira was struck again by the intensity of his gaze. "You're here. That's what matters." "Why am I here?" Luca crossed the space between them in a few easy strides. "Because last night you felt it too." "Felt what?" "The tremor." His voice was quiet, almost clinical. "In my hand, against your back. You noticed." Mira considered lying but dismissed it immediately. Something told her Luca DeSantis had very little patience for dishonesty. "I noticed. No one else has. In 3 years, dozens of handshakes, hundreds of interactions. No one else has felt it, or at least no one has acknowledged it." He paused. "You looked me in the eyes, and you saw something." "I saw pain," Mira said honestly. "Yes." Luca's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted slightly. "I need you to understand something, Miss Vance. In my world, showing weakness is the same as signing your own death warrant. That tremor, that moment of vulnerability, it's a problem, one I need to solve." "I don't understand what this has to do with me." "You're a dancer, a professional. You understand movement, control, the relationship between mind and body." Luca gestured toward the hardwood floor. "I need you to teach me how to make it stop." Mira stared at him. "You want dance lessons?" "I want you to help me regain complete control over my body. The tremor is psychological, not physical. It happens during moments of—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Emotional vulnerability. Dancing is the only time I can't hide it, can't control it. So I need to learn how to dance without feeling, how to move through the steps without letting anything else in. That's not how dance works." "Then teach me how it does work." There was something almost desperate in his voice now, though his face remained impassive. "Name your price, whatever you want, I'll pay it." Mira thought about her rent, her student loans, the showcase she was preparing that would probably lose money. She thought about the smart thing to do, which was to walk away from whatever this was. "Why me?" she asked instead. "Because you didn't step back," Luca said simply. "Last night when I offered my hand, you took it, even though you knew, or at least suspected, who I was. What I am. You didn't hesitate. You didn't judge. You just danced." He paused. "And because you're good enough to teach me what I need to learn. I have other commitments, rehearsals, performances. I'll work around them. We can meet here, in the evenings, however often you think is necessary." Luca's eyes held hers. "Please." That single word, delivered with such quiet intensity, broke through Mira's remaining resistance. "Twice a week," she heard herself say. 2 hours each session, and I get to choose the music, the choreography, everything. If I'm teaching you, we do it my way." "Agreed. And I want to know why." Mira stepped closer to him, close enough to see the faint scar along his jawline that she hadn't noticed last night. "Why you're doing this?" "The real reason." Luca was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of his shirt and pulled the fabric aside. The scar across his chest was vicious, a long, ragged line that started near his collarbone and disappeared beneath the shirt. Not a surgical scar, a wound. 5 years ago, Luca said quietly, I trusted the wrong person. Someone I thought I knew. Someone he paused, cared about. We were dancing at a charity gala, much like last night. She led me into a specific position, a particular step, and her partner, who I thought was just another guest, put a knife between my ribs. Mira's breath caught. I survived. Obviously. But the tremor started after that, a reminder that trust is dangerous. That vulnerability is fatal, that caring about someone can literally get you killed. Luca rebuttoned his shirt. So yes, I want to learn how to dance without feeling, because in my world, feelings are weaknesses, and weaknesses get you buried. Luca, we start tomorrow, he interrupted. 7 p.m. Don't be late. It wasn't until Mira was back in her car, pulling out of the warehouse district, that she realized she'd agreed to teach tango to one of the most dangerous men in the city, and that the scar on his chest looked exactly like the kind of wound that should have killed him. The scandal hit the internet before Mira even made it home. Crime Lord's mystery woman read one headline. Who is Luca DeSantis' new obsession? Asked another. Someone had taken photos at last night's gala, grainy cell phone shots of Mira and Luca dancing, of his hand against her back, of the way they'd looked at each other in the final position. The comments were brutal. Who is this nobody? Gold digger alert. She's probably just another escort. How long before he gets bored and she disappears? Mira's phone rang. Her manager. Have you seen the news? He didn't wait for her to answer. This is bad, Mira. Really bad. I've already had 3 clients cancel bookings because they don't want the drama. They don't want to be associated with... With what? I danced with someone at a gala. That's literally what I was hired to do. You danced with Luca DeSantis. There's a difference. And now every gossip site and tabloid in the city is running with it. They're digging into your background, your finances, your ex-boyfriends. My ex-boyfriends? Mira's stomach dropped. What do my ex-boyfriends have to do with anything? There was a pause on the other end of the line. You might want to sit down for this. Mira sat. Daniel Reed gave an interview this morning to the Metro Post. He said you two dated for 3 years, that you were troubled and unstable, that he broke it off because you were too focused on your career to maintain a healthy relationship. He's positioning himself as the concerned ex who's worried about you getting involved with dangerous people. Daniel. Of course it was Daniel. Mira's ex-boyfriend was a prosecutor in the district attorney's office, the kind of ambitious lawyer who saw every relationship as a potential stepping stone. They dated during Mira's last year of professional dancing, before the injury, before everything fell apart. He'd been supportive right up until she wasn't useful to him anymore. Then he'd left, quickly, cleanly, and with a breakup speech that had somehow made her failures feel like moral failings. Why would he give an interview about me? Mira asked, though she already knew the answer. Because talking about you gets him attention, gets his name in the papers, positions him as someone who knows Luca DeSantis' business, even if it's just tangentially. Her manager sighed. Look, Mira, I'm going to be honest with you. This attention isn't good for your career. The kind of clients who hire dancers for private events don't want drama. They want discretion. And right now, you're the opposite of discreet. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe take a few weeks off. Let this blow over. Once people forget about the whole DeSantis thing, we can rebuild. Mira ended the call and stared at her phone. The whole DeSantis thing. As if Luca was a scandal to be managed, a problem to be solved, instead of a person who'd asked for her help. A person who'd defended her when she was being harassed. A person whose hand trembled when he touched her. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Check your email. Elmira opened her laptop. The email had no subject line, just a single attachment. A contract. Reading through it made Mira's hands shake. Luca wasn't offering to pay her for dance lessons. He was offering to hire her as a cultural consultant for his various legitimate businesses. The salary was obscene, more than she'd made in the last 2 years combined. The terms were generous, the expectations vague enough to give her flexibility with her other commitments. And attached to the contract was a second document, a non-disclosure agreement with teeth. Everything about their arrangement, the lessons, the location, the content of their conversations, was to remain completely confidential. Violation of the NDA would result in immediate termination and legal action. It was protection. for both of them. Mira stared at the documents for a long time. This was the moment to really back out, to send a polite email declining the offer, to block the number, to pretend the last 24 hours had been some kind of fever dream. Instead, she signed both documents and sent them back. Her phone rang immediately. Luca's voice was calm, measured. "You signed." "I signed." "The money will be in your account by tomorrow morning. And Mira?" "Yes?" "Ignore the news, ignore the comments, ignore everyone except me." There was steel in his voice now. "What we're doing is between us. No one else gets to have an opinion about it. Luca, my ex-boyfriend is giving interviews. Daniel Reed, prosecutor in the DA's office, graduated from Columbia Law, currently working on a corruption case against the Castellano family." Luca's tone was almost bored, like he was reading from a file. "He's ambitious, moderately intelligent, and completely expendable. Don't worry about him." "How do you know all that?" "I know everything about everyone who matters. And as of last night, you matter." He paused. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. We'll start with the basics. And Mira?" "Yes?" "Wear something you can actually move in. Last night's dress was beautiful, but completely impractical." He hung up before she could respond. Mira sat in her tiny apartment, surrounded by the pieces of a life that suddenly felt very small and very fragile, and wondered what exactly she'd just agreed to. The second scandal broke 3 days later. Mira was at a coffee shop near her apartment, reviewing choreography notes for her showcase, when her phone started buzzing with notifications. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of them lighting up simultaneously. Someone had leaked her old performance contracts, not the recent ones, from her work as hired entertainment at private events. The older ones, from before her injury, when she danced professionally. But they hadn't just leaked the contracts, they'd annotated them, highlighted specific clauses, made particular sections look damning. Performer agrees to maintain strict diet and exercise regimen as directed by company management. Performer acknowledges that physical appearance is essential to employment and agrees to modifications as requested. Performer will make herself available for promotional events, photo shoots, and sponsor obligations as determined by management. Out of context, the contracts made Mira's old dance company look like a human trafficking operation, made her look like a victim, or worse, made her look complicit. The comments were immediate and vicious. "This is what happens when you sell yourself. She's been doing this for years, from one contract to another. DeSantis just found a professional." Mira's hand shook as she scrolled through the posts. Someone had worked hard to make this look as damaging as possible. Someone with access to documents that should have been private. Someone with a specific agenda. Her phone rang. Not her manager this time. A blocked number. "Miss Vance?" The voice was female, sophisticated, with the kind of practiced warmth that felt like a threat. "We haven't been formally introduced. My name is Isabella Cortez." The woman from the gala. The one who'd called Mira decorative. "What do you want?" Mira asked. "To give you some advice, woman to woman." Isabella's voice remained perfectly pleasant. "You're out of your depth. Luca DeSantis isn't a man who does charity work or rescues dancers from obscurity. Whatever arrangement you think you have with him, it's temporary. You're this month's distraction, maybe next month's if you're lucky, but eventually he'll move on, and when he does, you'll be left with nothing except a reputation you'll never recover from." "Did you leak those contracts?" "I made sure certain information became public, yes, because you need to understand something." Isabella's tone hardened. "This world, Luca's world, my world, isn't yours. You don't belong here. You're not equipped for it. And every day you spend pretending otherwise, you're putting yourself in more danger." "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check. But since you seem determined to learn the hard way, let me be more direct." Isabella paused. "Leave now, and I'll make sure the story dies. I'll clean up the mess, spin it as a brief misunderstanding, help you rebuild your little dance career. Stay, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you are. A nobody trying to climb her way into relevance by sleeping with powerful men." "I'm not sleeping with anyone." "Doesn't matter. Perception is reality. And right now, I control the perception. Isabella's voice turned almost kind. Think about it, Miss Vance. Really think about what you're willing to lose. Because I promise you, whatever Luca is offering, it's not worth what this will cost. The call ended. Mira sat in the coffee shop, surrounded by people living normal lives, drinking normal coffee, having normal problems. She thought about Isabella's offer, about going back to obscurity, to safety, to a life that didn't include death threats and leaked contracts and dangerous men with trembling hands. Then she thought about Luca's scar, about the way he'd said please, about the tremor in his fingers that spoke of old wounds and carefully hidden pain. Mira picked up her phone and sent a text to the number Luca had called from. Someone leaked my old dance contracts, made them look ugly. Your friend Isabella is trying to scare me off. The response came within seconds. She's not my friend. And you don't scare easily, do you? Should I? Probably, but don't. I'll handle Isabella. You just show up tonight, 7 p.m. We have work to do. Mira finished her coffee, closed her laptop, and tried not to think about all the ways this could end badly. The warehouse space was transformed when Mira arrived that evening. The hardwood floor had been marked with tape, lines indicating positions, angles, the geometric precision of Tango's basic structure. A sound system sat in one corner, currently silent. And Luca stood in the center of it all, wearing dark pants and a simple black shirt, looking less like a crime lord and more like a dancer preparing for rehearsal. You came, he said. You doubted I would? Isabella can be persuasive when she wants to be. She's also transparent. Everything she said was designed to make me feel small. Mira dropped her bag near the door and began stretching. I spent 8 years in professional dance. I know what intimidation looks like. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here. Mira finished her stretches and turned to face him. But we need to establish something before we start. I'm not interested in whatever political game you and Isabella are playing. I'm not a pawn. I'm not leverage. And I'm not going to be used to make a point. I'm here to teach you tango. That's it. Luca's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement. Agreed. Good. Then let's talk about what you actually want to learn. I told you, I need to dance without feeling. Yes, I heard you. Mira walked to the center of the floor. But that's not how it works. You can't turn off emotion in dance any more than you can turn off your heartbeat. What you can do is learn to channel it, to transform vulnerability into something else. Control, maybe. Or power. That sounds like therapy. Dance is therapy. It's just therapy with better music. Mira gestured for him to join her on the floor. Show me what you know. Basic position. Luca moved into position with the kind of ease that suggested he'd done this before. His frame was strong, his posture excellent. But when his hand settled against Mira's back, she felt it again, that slight tremor, there and gone in a heartbeat. When did it start? She asked quietly. The tremor. Immediately after the attack. Luca's voice was carefully neutral. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Multiple surgeries. They said I was lucky. The knife missed my heart by less than an inch. When I was finally able to move again, to get out of bed, I noticed my hands weren't steady. Doctors said it was trauma response. Psychological, not neurological. They said it would fade. But it hasn't. It comes and goes. Mostly I can control it. But certain triggers, he paused. Contact, close contact. Particularly in contexts that require trust. That's when it manifests. Like dancing. Like dancing. Mira stepped back, considering. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to try to eliminate the tremor. We're going to acknowledge it, work with it, understand it. That's the opposite of what I asked for. I know, but you asked the wrong question. Mira moved to the sound system and selected a track, something slow, deliberate, with a clear rhythm. The tremor isn't your enemy, it's information. Your body is telling you something. We need to figure out what. My body is telling me that trust is dangerous. Maybe. Or maybe it's telling you that you haven't processed what happened. That you're carrying that attack with you every time you try to be vulnerable with someone. Mira returned to the center of the floor. We're going to start with the basics. Simple steps, no embellishments. I want you to focus on the physical mechanics. Not the emotion, not the memory, just the movement. They began. For the first hour, they worked through fundamental patterns. The walk, the cross, basic turns. Luca was technically proficient. He knew the steps, could execute them with precision. But there was something mechanical about it, like he was performing a series of tasks rather than dancing. "You're thinking too much," Mira said after the fifth repetition of the same sequence. "You told me to focus on mechanics." "Mechanics, not mathematics. There's a difference." She stopped moving and looked at him. "When you led me at the gala, it was different. You weren't counting steps. You were reacting, responding, feeling the music. What's changed?" "At the gala, I was angry. At the man who was harassing me." "Yes." Luca's jaw tightened. "I saw what he was doing, what he was implying, and I wanted to make a point that you weren't—" He stopped. "Wasn't what?" "Available. Accessible. Whatever he thought you were." Luca met her eyes. "You deserved better than to be talked to like that." Mira felt something shift in her chest. "So you asked me to dance. I commanded you to dance. There's a difference." "Is there?" "In my world, yes." Luca's voice was quiet now. Asking implies the possibility of refusal. Command implies there's only one acceptable answer. And yet, I could have said no. But you didn't. They stood there inches apart, the music still playing in the background. Mira could feel the heat of Luca's body, could see the slight movement of his chest as he breathed. "Let's try something different," she said, stepping back. "I'm going to lead this time." Luca's eyebrows rose. "That's not traditional." "Neither is what we're doing." Mira moved back into position, but this time with her hand on his shoulder, taking the lead role. "Trust me." She felt him tense, then consciously relax. When she began to move, Luca followed, awkwardly at first, then with increasing fluidity. Without the burden of leading, without the pressure of control, his body responded more naturally to the music. "Better," Mira murmured. "Now, close your eyes." "What?" "Close your eyes. Trust the music. Trust the movement. Trust—" She paused. "Trust me." Luca's eyes closed. They moved through the sequence again, and this time Mira felt the difference. His breathing deepened. His muscles relaxed incrementally. The mechanical precision gave way to something more organic, more real. And when she checked his hand against her shoulder, the tremor had lessened. Not disappeared, but lessened. "Open your eyes," Mira said softly. When Luca looked at her, there was something vulnerable in his expression, something raw. "It was better that time," he said. "It was. Because you weren't trying to control it. You were just moving. Moving requires trust." "Yes, it does." Mira stepped back, breaking the position. "That's enough for tonight. We'll continue next session." "Mira, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't analyze it, don't question it. Just let it be what it was. A good session, progress." Luca nodded slowly. "Same time next week?" "Same time next week." Mira gathered her things and headed for the elevator. It wasn't until she was back in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, that she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth. Teaching Luca DeSantis to dance wasn't going to be simple. Because she wasn't just teaching him movement, she was teaching him to trust again. And that was infinitely more dangerous than any tango step could ever be. The money appeared in Mira's account exactly when Luca said it would. She stared at the balance on her phone screen for a full minute, convinced there had been some kind of banking error. No one paid this much for dance lessons. No one paid this much for anything legitimate. But the contract had been clear, and the deposit was real. Mira transferred enough to cover 3 months of rent, paid off her maxed-out credit card, and tried not to think about what she was actually being paid for. Their second session was scheduled for Thursday evening. Mira spent the day teaching a beginner's salsa class at a community center downtown, watching middle-aged couples stumble through basic steps while pretending her life hadn't become something out of a crime thriller. During the lunch break, one of her students showed her a tabloid article on their phone. "Isn't this you?" the woman asked, eyes bright with gossip hunger. The photo was from the gala again, but someone had enhanced it, zoomed in on Mira's face during the final position of the dance. She looked transported, caught in a moment of genuine emotion. The headline read, "From Nobody to Notorious, the Dancer Who Caught a Killer's Eye." "That's a really unflattering angle," Mira said, handing the phone back. So it is you. Oh my God, what's he like? Is he really as dangerous as they say? Mira thought about Luca's scar, about the tremor in his hands, about the way he'd said please like the word hurt him. He's a client, she said. That's all. But the woman's knowing smile suggested she didn't believe that for a second. By the time Mira arrived at the warehouse that evening, she was exhausted from maintaining the lie. The lie that this was normal. The lie that she knew what she was doing. The lie that she wasn't in over her head. Luca was already there, working through stretches with the kind of focused intensity that suggested he'd been at it for a while. He looked up when the elevator doors opened. "You're early," Mira said. "I'm always early. It's good practice." "For what?" "Not getting killed." He said it so matter-of-factly that Mira almost laughed. Almost. She set down her bag and began her own warm-up routine. They moved through their individual preparations in silence, the only sound the faint hum of traffic from the street below. It felt oddly domestic, this shared ritual, and that feeling made Mira deeply uncomfortable. "Before we start," Luca said, breaking the silence, "I need to know something." "What?" "Daniel Reed came to see me yesterday." Mira's hands stilled mid-stretch. "What?" "Your ex-boyfriend, the ambitious prosecutor. He showed up at my office downtown, requested a meeting, said he was concerned about your welfare." Luca's tone was carefully neutral. "He suggested that you were being coerced, that I was taking advantage of your financial difficulties to manipulate you into some kind of compromising arrangement." "That son of a—" Mira cut herself off, breathing hard. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that your professional relationship with me was none of his business. That if he had concerns about your welfare, he should address them with you directly rather than attempting to intimidate your employer." Luca paused. "Then I had security escort him out before I did something I'd regret." "He's trying to save his career," Mira said bitterly. "Getting involved with your business, even tangentially, makes him look connected, important. Like he's not just another junior prosecutor hoping for a promotion." "Is that why you dated him?" The question caught Mira off guard. "What? Did you date him because he was ambitious? Because being with a prosecutor made you feel safe? Legitimate?" "I dated him because I was lonely, and he was there and he seemed like he cared." Mira's voice hardened. "And then I realized he only cared about what I could do for him. When my career fell apart, he left. Simple as that." "Nothing about relationships is simple," says the man who got stabbed by his dance partner. The words were out before Mira could stop them. She watched Luca's expression close down, watched him retreat behind that mask of perfect composure. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was true." Luca moved to the center of the floor. "It was true. And you're right, I'm the last person who should be giving relationship advice. But I meant what I said about Reed. If he bothers you again, tell me. I can handle Daniel." "I'm sure you can, but you shouldn't have to." Luca extended his hand, falling into the familiar opening position. "Shall we?" They worked through the basic sequences again, but this time Mira introduced variations. Slight changes in timing, unexpected shifts in direction, moments that required Luca to react rather than simply execute predetermined steps. "What are you doing?" he asked after she'd led him through a particularly sharp turn. "Teaching you to adapt. Tango isn't just about knowing the steps. It's about responding to your partner, reading their body, their breathing, their intention." Mira adjusted his frame slightly. "You're too rigid. You're treating this like a military exercise." "I was taught that control equals survival." "Control, yes. Rigidity, no. There's a difference." She demonstrated by initiating a simple walk, then suddenly changing the rhythm. Luca stumbled slightly before recovering. "See? You knew what to do, but you hesitated because it wasn't what you expected. So you're teaching me to expect the unexpected." "I'm teaching you to flow with it instead of fighting it." Mira moved back into position. Again, and this time don't try to predict what I'm going to do. Just respond. They ran through the sequence 5 more times. On the 5th attempt, something clicked. Luca stopped trying to lead from a place of control and started leading from a place of connection. His hand steadied, his breathing synchronized with hers. The tremor didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else. Not weakness, but sensitivity. Better, Mira murmured as they came to a stop. Much better. Luca didn't release her immediately. They stood there, still in the final position, his hand warm against her back. Why are you really doing this? He asked quietly. Doing what? Helping me. You could have walked away, taken Isabella's offer, rebuilt your career, stayed out of whatever mess my life represents. But you're here. Mira considered lying, considered saying something about the money, about professional obligation, about anything except the truth. But Luca's eyes demanded honesty. Because you asked, she said simply. Because someone with your kind of power doesn't ask for help. They demand it, they buy it, they take it. But you asked, and that meant something. It meant I was desperate. It meant you were human. Something in Luca's expression shifted. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Mira saw the man beneath it. Scared, scarred, trying so hard to hold everything together that he'd forgotten how to let anything in. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Luca stepped back, pulling the phone from his pocket. His face went carefully blank as he read whatever message had appeared. I need to take this, he said. We'll continue next session. Luca, thank you for tonight, same time next week. He was already moving toward a door at the far end of the space, phone pressed to his ear, his voice dropping into the kind of tone that suggested the conversation wasn't one Mira should overhear. She gathered her things and left, trying not to feel dismissed. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. When Mira stepped out into the warehouse's ground floor, she found the man who'd let her in on her first visit waiting by the exit, the one built like a boxer. Miss Vance, his voice was surprisingly soft. Mr. DeSantis asked me to make sure you got to your car safely. That's not necessary. With respect, it wasn't a request. He walked her to her Honda, which looked even more pathetic than usual, parked next to the luxury vehicles that filled the lot. As Mira unlocked her door, the man spoke again. He's different with you. Mira turned. What? Mr. DeSantis. He's different when you're around. Calmer, more... The man searched for the right word. Present. You've known him a long time? 10 years. Since before the incident. The man's expression darkened slightly. He hasn't let anyone that close since it happened. Not physically close, I mean. He maintains distance, always, but with you? He shrugged. Just thought you should know. Why are you telling me this? Because you seem like someone who might actually give a damn. And he needs that more than he'd ever admit. The man stepped back. Drive safe, Miss Vance. Mira sat in her car for a long time after he'd gone back inside, thinking about masks and scars and the different ways people protected themselves from being hurt again. 3 days later, the second wave of attacks began. Mira was finishing up another community center class when her phone started buzzing. Not notifications this time, actual calls. Her manager, her landlord, the director of the showcase she was preparing for. All within the span of 10 minutes. She called her manager back first. Tell me you didn't do what they're saying you did, he said without preamble. I have no idea what you're talking about. The contracts, Mira, the ones that just got leaked. What contracts? Your contracts with Luca DeSantis. Someone posted them online, not just posted, annotated them, made them look like you're being paid to... He paused. I'm just going to say it. They made it look like you're a high-priced escort. Mira's stomach dropped. That's not... I know what the contracts actually are. I read through them. They're legitimate consulting agreements, but whoever leaked them highlighted specific clauses out of context. The confidentiality agreements, the personal availability requirements, the payment structure. They made it look like something else entirely. Who would do that? But Mira already knew. Isabella. This was Isabella's next move in whatever game she was playing. The showcase director called back before Mira could even process the first conversation. I'm sorry, the woman said, and she actually sounded sorry. But we can't have you perform. The board met this morning, and they feel that the current media attention would be too distracting. They don't want the showcase to become about scandal rather than dance. This is my piece. I've been preparing for months. I know. and I'm truly sorry, but the decision is final. The landlord's message was simpler. He was increasing her rent by 40%, effective next month. No explanation. Just numbers on a page that spelled out exactly how unwelcome she'd become. Mira sat in her car outside the community center, watching normal people live normal lives, and felt the walls closing in. This was systematic, calculated. Someone was methodically destroying every aspect of her life outside of her arrangement with Luca. Her phone rang again. Luca this time. "I just saw the leaks," he said. "I'm handling it." "How exactly are you going to handle this? These are legal contracts. They're already out there." "I have lawyers who specialize in making inconvenient information disappear, and I have other resources that are significantly less legal but considerably more effective." His voice was cold now, the voice of someone used to solving problems permanently. "Isabella made a mistake. She went after someone under my protection. That has consequences." "I'm not under your protection. I'm your dance instructor. You're both, and she knows that." This is her way of testing boundaries, seeing how far she can push before I react. Luca paused. "The question is what you want me to do about it." "What do you mean?" "I can make this disappear. I can make Isabella regret ever speaking your name. I can ensure that every door she's closed for you opens again, wider than before. But doing that means escalating. It means making you visible in ways you might not be comfortable with. It means everyone knowing you're not just associated with me, you're important to me. And if I say no, then I respect your decision and we continue as we have been. But the attacks won't stop. Isabella won't stop, not until she's made her point or I've made mine." Mira thought about her lost showcase, her increased rent, the contracts made to look like something ugly. She thought about spending the rest of her career fighting whispers and innuendo, always one scandal away from losing everything she'd rebuilt. "What exactly does escalation look like?" she asked. "Tomorrow night, there's a charity auction. Very exclusive, very public. Half the city's elite will be there, including Isabella. I'd like you to come with me. Not as hired entertainment, as my guest. We make a statement. We show her that her little campaign hasn't worked." "That sounds like I'd be painting an even bigger target on my back." "Yes," Luca agreed. "It would be. But it would also make you untouchable. Because everyone would understand that going after you means going through me. And very few people are willing to do that." Mira closed her eyes, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. About how much simpler her life had been 2 weeks ago, when her biggest problem was making rent and her career trajectory was predictably downward. "What time tomorrow?" she asked. 7. "I'll send a car." She could hear the smile in his voice. "And Mira, wear something that makes a statement. I thought you said last night's dress was impractical." For dancing, for making Isabella regret her life choices, it was perfect. The call ended, and Mira sat in the gathering darkness, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. The dress arrived at noon the next day, not delivered by a courier, hand-delivered by the same man who'd walked Mira to her car. He introduced himself this time. "Marco," he said, holding out a garment bag. "Mr. DeSantis thought you might need this." Inside the bag was a gown that probably cost more than Mira's car, deep emerald silk that caught the light like water, cut in a style that was elegant and dangerous all at once. There were shoes, too, and jewelry that looked antique and expensive. A note was pinned to the dress in Luca's precise handwriting. "For making statements, L." Mira tried it on in her tiny bathroom, barely able to turn around without knocking into something. But when she finally saw her reflection in the full-length mirror mounted on her bedroom door, she understood. She didn't look like hired entertainment anymore. She looked like someone who belonged. The car that arrived at 6:30 was exactly what Mira expected. Black, expensive, with windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. Marco held the door open, and Mira slid into the back seat. Luca was already there, wearing a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a classic film, but it was his expression when he saw her that made Mira's breath catch. "You look—" He stopped, seemed to reconsider whatever he'd been about to say. "The dress fits. It's perfect. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Tonight is going to be difficult." Luca's eyes met hers. "Isabella will try to provoke you. She'll say things designed to make you react, to make you look unstable or opportunistic or whatever narrative she's constructed. You need to ignore all of it. I've dealt with mean girls before. Isabella isn't a mean girl. She's a predator. There's a difference. Luca leaned back against the leather seat. She runs the Cortez family operations now. Inherited them after her father died in what was very publicly ruled an accident. She's smart, ruthless, and she sees every interaction as a negotiation. Tonight, she'll be negotiating your value, trying to prove you're worth less than I think you are. And what do you think I'm worth? Luca was quiet for a moment. More than she could possibly understand. The auction was held at the Meridian Hotel, in a ballroom that made the gala venue look modest by comparison. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, and everywhere Mira looked, people who radiated wealth and power in equal measure. The moment they stepped through the doors, conversations paused. Heads turned. Mira felt the weight of 100 assessments, 100 judgments being formed in real time. Luca's hand settled against the small of her back, steady, possessive, making a statement without saying a word. Mr. DeSantis! A man in his 60s approached, hand extended. Good to see you, and who is this? Mira Vance, Luca said, before Mira could introduce herself. My guest tonight. Charmed. The man's eyes took in the dress, the jewelry, the way Luca's hand remained against Mira's back. I don't believe we've met, Miss Vance. We haven't, Mira said, finding her voice. Mira is a professional dancer, Luca continued smoothly. She's consulting on several of my cultural investment projects. It was the truth, technically. But the way Luca said it made it sound more significant than dance lessons. Made it sound like Mira was important. They moved through the crowd, Luca introducing Mira to a succession of powerful people whose names she immediately forgot. Business owners, politicians, others whose occupations were described vaguely or not at all. Everyone was polite. Everyone was assessing. And then Isabella appeared. She materialized out of the crowd like something conjured, wearing black, of course, and smiling with practiced warmth. Luca, Miss Vance, what a surprise to see you both here. Isabella's eyes traveled over Mira's dress. That's quite a statement piece. Vintage Valentino, if I'm not mistaken. You have excellent taste, Luca. I do, Luca agreed. Though I have to wonder, Isabella turned her full attention to Mira now, how it feels to be dressed up like a doll. To have someone else choose your clothes, your jewelry, your entire presentation. Does it ever feel like you're playing dress-up in someone else's life? Not at all, Mira said calmly. The dress is lovely, but I'd look good in anything. That's one advantage of having worked as a professional performer. You learn how to carry yourself. Isabella's smile tightened fractionally. Of course. Your performance career. I've been reading about it. Quite a fall from principal dancer to, what was the term used? Hired ambiance. Isabella. Luca's voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. We're at a charity event. Perhaps we could focus on that, rather than on rewriting Mira's professional history. I'm simply making conversation, though I suppose some histories are more comfortable to discuss than others. Isabella's eyes flicked to Luca's chest, to where his scar lay hidden beneath the tuxedo. Speaking of which, how is your health, Luca? Any lingering effects from that unfortunate incident 5 years ago? The question was designed to wound, to remind Luca of his vulnerability. Mira felt him tense beside her. I'm perfectly well, Luca said. Thank you for your concern. Good, because I'd hate to think you were making decisions based on trauma rather than strategy. Getting close to people again after being hurt so badly, that takes courage. Or foolishness. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Mira had had enough. You know what I think? She said, her voice pleasant but carrying an edge. I think you're scared. Isabella's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You're scared that Luca is moving forward while you're still fighting old wars. You're scared that maybe trust isn't weakness after all. And you're especially scared that someone like me, someone you see as beneath you, might actually matter to someone like him. Because if that's true, it means your whole worldview is wrong. The silence that followed was profound. Isabella's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Careful, Isabella said softly. You're very new to this world, Miss Vance. Very inexperienced. Accidents happen to people who overestimate their importance. Is that a threat? It's observation. People who get involved in situations they don't understand tend to get hurt. I'd hate to see that happen to you. Luca stepped forward slightly, positioning himself between Mira and Isabella. This conversation is over, he said quietly. And Isabella, if anything happens to Mira, anything at all, I will hold you personally responsible. Am I clear? Perfectly. Isabella's smile returned, but it was colder now. Enjoy the auction, you two. I'm sure it will be illuminating. She disappeared back into the crowd, leaving Mira shaking slightly from adrenaline. I'm sorry, Luca said. I shouldn't have brought you here. Don't apologize. I wanted to come. Mira took a breath, steadying herself. And I meant what I said. She's scared. She's also dangerous. So are you, and you're on my side. Luca looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Yes, I am. The auction itself was bizarre. Wealthy people bidding thousands of dollars on vacation packages and artwork while pretending to care about whatever charity was supposedly benefiting. Mira sat next to Luca, watching money change hands with casual indifference. Then Isabella took the stage. Our next item, she announced, her voice carrying perfectly through the sound system, is something a bit different. A unique experience. A private tango lesson with Mira Vance, professional dancer and recent media sensation. Mira's blood ran cold. Isabella has generously donated this on Miss Vance's behalf, the auctioneer continued, reading from a card. 1 hour of private instruction valued at $50,000. Luca's voice rang out. The room went silent. I'm sorry, the auctioneer said. 50,000, that's my bid. Luca stood, his presence commanding immediate attention. And since Miss Vance's time is exclusively contracted to me, this auction item is fraudulent. There will be no lesson. There will be no bid. And Isabella knows this. I was simply trying to help, Isabella called from the stage, to give Miss Vance some exposure. I had no idea her contract was so restrictive. Now you do. Luca extended his hand to Mira. We're leaving. Mira took his hand and let him lead her out of the ballroom. Behind them, she could hear the whispered conversation starting, the scandal of the early exit already becoming tomorrow's gossip. They didn't speak until they were in the car, Marco pulling away from the hotel. I'm sorry, Luca said again. Stop apologizing. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? If I hadn't asked you to dance that night, if I hadn't hired you, if I hadn't brought you into my world, I'd still be invisible, Mira interrupted. I'd still be struggling to pay rent. I'd still be teaching basic salsa to bored housewives and wondering if my career was ever going to be more than hired entertainment at rich people's parties. She turned to face him. Yes, this is complicated. Yes, Isabella is trying to destroy me. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm actually living instead of just surviving. Luca's hand found hers in the darkness of the car. She's going to escalate. Tonight was a warning. Next time will be worse. Then we'll handle it. Together. His fingers tightened around hers. I can't promise I can keep you safe. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to trust me to hold my own. Mira looked at their joined hands. That's what partners do, right? They trust each other. Partners, Luca repeated softly, like he was testing the word, unless you prefer something else. No. His thumb traced a small circle against her palm. Partner works. The car pulled up to Mira's apartment building, modest, unremarkable, so far removed from the world they'd just left. But Luca didn't release her hand. Our next session, he said. I think it's time we moved beyond basics. What did you have in mind? Teaching me how to fight while dancing, how to make vulnerability into a weapon, like you said. His eyes met hers. Because you're right. Isabella is scared, and scared people are the most dangerous kind. We need to be ready. Oh, ready for what? Whatever comes next. Mira got out of the car and watched it pull away, Luca's silhouette visible through the tinted back window. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, still wearing the emerald dress, still feeling the ghost of his hand in hers. Inside, she found an envelope that had been slipped under her door. No return address, just her name in neat block letters. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Mira leaving the warehouse after her first session with Luca. The angle was from above, probably taken from one of the surrounding buildings. Someone had been watching. Someone had been waiting. On the back, a message in the same neat handwriting. Trust is expensive. Are you sure you can afford it? Mira locked her door, checked the windows, and tried not to think about how many other photographs might exist. How many other moments had been captured and cataloged. Her phone buzzed. A text from Luca, probably asking if she'd gotten home safely. But when she looked at the screen, the message was from an unknown number. Check your email. D. Daniel. Mira's hand shook as she opened her laptop. The email was waiting, sent from Daniel's personal account rather than his work one. Mira, I know you think I'm the enemy right now, that I'm trying to ruin whatever you have with DeSantis, but I need you to understand something. I've been investigating his organization for 6 months. I have evidence of racketeering, money laundering, possible involvement in 3 unsolved murders. He's not who you think he is. I'm attaching a file. It's classified, so I'm risking my career by sending it to you. But I'd rather risk that than watch you get hurt, or worse. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's made you believe, it's not real. People like Luca DeSantis don't have real relationships. They have assets and liabilities. Right now, you're useful to him. When that changes, you'll become a liability. Please be careful. Daniel. The attachment was labeled DeSantis Organization, Ongoing Investigation. Mira's finger hovered over the file. She thought about Luca's scar, about his trembling hands, about the way he'd said please like it cost him something. She thought about Isabella's threats, about leaked contracts and orchestrated scandals. She thought about Daniel, who'd left her when she was struggling and was now suddenly concerned about her welfare. And she thought about trust, how expensive it was, how rare, how easily destroyed. Mira deleted the email without opening the attachment. Whatever Daniel thought he knew, whatever evidence he thought he had, it didn't change the fundamental truth she'd already decided to believe. Luca had asked for her help, and she'd said yes. Everything else was just noise. Mira didn't tell Luca about the photograph or Daniel's email. She told herself it was because neither mattered, that they were just more noise in an already chaotic situation. But the truth was simpler and more complicated. She didn't want to see what would happen if Luca knew someone had been watching her. Didn't want to find out exactly how far his protection would extend or what methods he'd use to ensure it. Their next session came 3 days later, and Mira arrived to find the warehouse space transformed. The hardwood floor had been cleared completely, the furniture pushed to the edges. In the center of the room, Luca stood talking to a woman Mira had never seen before. Late 30s, athletic build, with the kind of posture that suggested military training. Mira, Luca said as the elevator doors opened. This is Sophia. She's going to help us today. Sophia turned and Mira caught the slight bulge under her jacket that indicated a shoulder holster. Her smile was professional, but not warm. Miss Vance, Sophia said, Luca's told me about your training philosophy. I think we can work well together. What exactly are we working on? Mira asked, setting down her bag. Practical application, Luca said. You told me tango could be survival. I want you to show me how. Sophia moved to the sound system and pulled up a tango track, something traditional, with a strong beat. As the music began, she walked to the center of the floor and took a defensive stance. The average attack lasts less than 10 seconds, Sophia said, her voice taking on a lecturer's cadence. Most victims freeze because they haven't trained their bodies to respond under stress. But dancers already have muscle memory. They already understand momentum, balance, leverage. We're just going to redirect that training. Mira looked at Luca. You want me to teach you how to fight using tango. I want you to teach me how to use what we're already learning, how to make it functional. Luca moved onto the floor. Sophia is going to demonstrate threats. You're going to show me how dance movements can become defensive ones. It was insane. It was also brilliant. Mira had spent years learning how to move her body with precision, how to use momentum and rotation to create impossible-looking movements. She'd just never thought about applying those principles to actual physical confrontation. Sophia attacked first, a simple grab, reaching for Luca's arm. Luca reacted on instinct, trying to pull away, and Sophia held firm. Stop, Mira said. You're fighting against her force. Don't use it. She moved to Luca's side. When she grabs you, she's committed to that direction, so you rotate, like we do in a molinet, and her own momentum carries her past you. She demonstrated slowly, letting Sophia grab her arm and then spinning low and fast, using the woman's grip as an anchor point. Sophia stumbled forward, off balance. "Now you try," Mira said to Luca. They worked through it 10 times, then 20. Luca was a quick study, his body remembering the rotational movements from their dance sessions and applying them in this new context. Sophia increased the speed and aggression of her attacks, and Luca adapted. "Good," Sophia said after a particularly clean execution. "But you're still thinking too much. It needs to be instinct." "That takes time," Mira said. "We might not have time." Sophia's expression was grim. "There's been chatter. Isabella is planning something bigger than social attacks. Something physical." Luca's jaw tightened. "How credible is the intelligence?" "Credible enough that Marco has doubled your security detail. Credible enough that I'm here instead of in Miami handling the shipping situation." Sophia looked at Mira. "You need to understand something, Miss Vance. This isn't a game. Isabella doesn't make empty threats. If she's decided you're an obstacle, she will remove you. The only question is when and how." "Then we make sure I'm ready," Mira said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. They spent the next hour working through scenarios. How to break a wrist hold using the sharp pivot of an ocho. How to use a gancho, the hook kick that looked decorative in tango, to strike effectively at knee joints. How to create distance using the same explosive movements that made Volcata so dramatic on the dance floor. By the time Sophia left, Mira's muscles burned and her mind raced with the surreal combination of artistry and violence they'd just practiced. Luca stood in the center of the floor, breathing hard, his shirt damp with sweat. The careful composure he usually maintained had cracked, replaced with something raw. "You're good at this," Mira said, moving to where her water bottle sat by her bag. "I've had training before, military, martial arts, but never like this." Luca watched her with an intensity that made Mira's skin prickle. "You see things differently, connections I never would have made. That's what dancers do. We find the beauty in mechanics, the art in physics." Mira took a drink, trying to calm her racing heart. "Though I never imagined using it quite like this. Do you regret it, getting involved in all of this?" Mira considered the question honestly. She thought about the photograph under her door, about Daniel's warning, about Isabella's threats. She thought about her lost showcase and increased rent, and the way her manager now avoided her calls. "No," she said finally, "I don't regret it." "Why not?" "Because for the first time in years, I feel like what I do matters. Not just aesthetically, not just artistically, but practically. You needed help, and I could give it. That's not something to regret." Luca crossed the space between them, and Mira was suddenly very aware of how close he was standing. Close enough that she could see the faint scar on his jaw, could smell his cologne mixed with sweat, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Dance with me," he said quietly. "We just spent 2 hours. Not like that. Not training. Just dancing." He extended his hand and Mira saw that it was completely steady. No tremor, no hesitation. She took his hand. The music Sophia had left playing was still going, a slow tango, melancholy and sweet. Luca pulled Mira close, closer than he ever had during their lessons, and began to move. This wasn't the mechanical practice of their early sessions or the analytical training they'd just finished. This was what tango was supposed to be. Two people communicating through movement, their bodies saying things their mouths couldn't. Luca led her through a series of turns, each one perfectly timed, perfectly controlled. His hand against her back was firm and warm, his breath steady against her temple. When he initiated a dip, Mira let herself fall backward, trusting him completely to support her weight. As he brought her back up, their faces were inches apart. "Your hand isn't shaking," Mira whispered. "I know." "Why?" "Because I'm not afraid anymore." Luca's eyes searched hers. "Not of this. Not of you." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Mira could feel her heart pounding, could see Luca's pulse jumping at his throat. All she had to do was close the distance, lean in just slightly, and her phone rang, shrill and insistent. The spell broke. Luca stepped back, his expression closing down into something more controlled. Mira fumbled for her phone, saw Marco's name on the screen. I should take this, she said. Of course, Mira answered. Hello? Miss Vance, it's Marco. I'm outside your apartment building. You need to come home now. Something in his voice made her blood run cold. What's wrong? Just come home. I'm waiting. The call ended. Mira looked at Luca, who'd clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand something was wrong. Marco's at my apartment. He said I need to come home. I'll drive you. Luca was already moving toward the elevator. Now. They made the drive in tense silence. Mira tried calling Marco back, but he didn't answer. She tried texting, got no response. By the time they pulled up to her building, her hands were shaking. Marco stood on the sidewalk, his face grim. Behind him, Mira could see her apartment window, or rather, where her window should have been. The glass was shattered, covered now with a plastic tarp that flapped in the evening breeze. What happened? Mira demanded, already moving toward the entrance. Don't go up yet, Marco said, catching her arm. Police are still inside. Police? Marco, what the hell is going on? Someone broke in, trashed the place, left a message. Marco glanced at Luca. We should wait for the officers to finish processing the scene. But Mira was already pulling away, already running for the stairs. She heard Luca and Marco following behind her, heard their voices calling her name, but she didn't stop. Her apartment door hung open, one hinge completely torn from the frame. Inside, 2 police officers were taking photographs while a third made notes on a tablet. The destruction was systematic. Every piece of furniture had been overturned or broken. Her clothes had been pulled from the closet and shredded. Books torn apart, pages scattered like confetti. The small television she'd saved for months to buy lay smashed on the floor, but it was the wall that made Mira's knees weak. Someone had spray-painted a message in red, the letters dripping like blood. Nobody dances with what's mine. One of the officers turned as Mira entered. Ma'am, you can't be in here yet. This is an active crime scene. This is my apartment, Mira said, her voice hollow. Miss Vance? The officer's expression shifted to something more sympathetic. I'm Officer Chen. I need to ask you some questions. Do you have any idea who might have done this? Mira looked at the message on the wall. What's mine? Not who. What? I need to see if anything was taken, she said instead of answering. We've documented everything. You can look, but please don't touch anything yet. Mira moved through the wreckage of her life, cataloging what remained. Her laptop was gone. Her phone charger, broken. The small jewelry box her grandmother had given her, still there, untouched. This wasn't robbery. This was a message. She made her way to the bedroom where her dance shoes had been arranged in a neat line on the floor. Each pair had been slashed, the ribbons cut, the soles torn from the uppers. Years of work, hundreds of performances, reduced to garbage. Mira picked up what had once been her favorite pair, soft leather, perfectly broken in, the pair she'd worn for her last professional performance before her injury. Someone had taken scissors or a knife to them with methodical precision. Mira, Luca's voice came from behind her, low and careful. We should go. They destroyed everything. She was surprised to find tears on her cheeks. Everything that mattered, we'll replace it, all of it. You can't replace memories. Mira set down the ruined shoes. You can't replace... A sound from the living room cut her off. Officer Chen was talking to someone new. A man's voice that Mira recognized immediately. Daniel. What is he doing here? She asked, moving back toward the living room. Daniel stood just inside the doorway, wearing his prosecutor's suit and an expression of calculated concern. When he saw Mira, he stepped forward. Thank God you're okay. When I heard about the break-in, How did you hear? Mira interrupted. This just happened. I have contacts in the department. They know we used to be involved, and they thought I'd want to know. Daniel's eyes moved past her to where Luca stood. DeSantis, I should have known you'd be here. This is none of your concern, Reed, Luca said quietly. When someone I care about is threatened, it becomes my concern. Daniel turned back to Mira. You need to file a restraining order, and you need to move somewhere safe. I can help arrange. I don't need your help. Mira, please. Look at this place. Whoever did this is escalating. This isn't about intimidation anymore. This is about violence. And you know exactly who's responsible. Do I? Isabella Cortez. We both know it. She sent you a message, and the next one won't be on your wall. It'll be on you." Daniel glanced at Luca again. "Unless DeSantis here is willing to actually do something about it, instead of just making things worse." "Careful," Luca said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're making accusations you can't prove." "Can't I?" "I've been investigating Isabella for months. I know how she operates. I know she uses violence to eliminate competition and obstacles. And I know," Daniel pulled a folder from his briefcase, "that she was seen in this neighborhood 2 hours ago. Surveillance footage from the convenience store down the street. Would you like to see?" He handed the folder to Officer Chen, who opened it and frowned. "We'll need to investigate this lead," Chen said. "Miss Vance, given the nature of the threat and the potential suspect, I'm going to recommend you stay somewhere else tonight. Do you have family in the area? Friends?" Mira thought about her small circle of acquaintances, all of whom had distanced themselves since the scandal. Thought about calling her mother 3 states away and trying to explain why her life had imploded. Thought about how alone she actually was. "She'll stay with me," Luca said. "Absolutely not," Daniel interjected. "That's exactly what Isabella wants. To drive Mira further into your world. To make her more isolated and dependent. She needs neutral ground, somewhere safe that isn't connected to either of you." "And where would you suggest?" Luca's tone was icy. "Your apartment? So you can continue your little rescue fantasy while she's vulnerable?" "This isn't about me. This is about Mira's safety, which you suddenly care about, despite abandoning her when she actually needed help." But Luca took a step closer to Daniel. "You left her when her career fell apart. You didn't return her calls, didn't check on her, didn't give a damn about her welfare. But now that she's connected to me, now that being her knight in shining armor might advance your career or undermine my organization, now you care. Don't insult both of us by pretending this is altruism." Daniel's face flushed. "You don't know anything about our relationship. I know she deleted your email without reading your so-called evidence. I know she's made her choice, and it wasn't you." Mira's head snapped toward Luca. "How did you know about the email?" Luca's expression didn't change. "I monitor threats to my organization. That includes communications sent to people under my protection." "You're monitoring my email?" "I'm monitoring everyone's email. It's basic security." Luca's eyes held hers. "And before you ask, no, I haven't read your personal correspondence, but I track metadata. I know when certain people of interest send you messages. I know when you delete them. It's not personal, Mira. It's practical." The casual admission should have made her angry, should have felt like a violation. Instead, Mira just felt tired. "Everyone needs to leave," she said quietly. "The officers can finish their investigation, but the rest of you, out, now." "Mira..." Both Luca and Daniel started simultaneously. "Out," Mira repeated, her voice harder now. "I need to think, and I can't do that with both of you standing here treating me like a prize to be won. This is my life that just got destroyed. My home, my things, mine. Not yours, not anyone else's. So both of you can leave and let me process this on my own terms." Officer Chen cleared his throat. "Miss Vance is right. We need space to work, and this is her residence. Gentlemen, if you could wait downstairs." Luca looked like he wanted to argue, but Marco appeared in the doorway and gave him a meaningful look. After a long moment, Luca nodded. "I'll be downstairs," he said to Mira. "When you're ready." Daniel started to say something, but Mira cut him off with a look. He left too, his expression a mixture of frustration and concern. When they were gone, Officer Chen approached Mira with a gentleness that made her want to cry again. "We'll do everything we can to find who did this," she said. "But I have to be honest with you. Break-ins like this, where nothing of significant value was taken, are hard to prosecute. Usually it's someone the victim knows, someone with a personal grudge. Is there anyone besides Ms. Cortez who might want to intimidate you?" Mira thought about all the people who'd turned their backs on her in the past 2 weeks. All the clients who'd canceled, the colleagues who'd stopped returning calls, the small cruelties of social exclusion. Any one of them might have been angry enough, resentful enough to do something like this. But she knew. Deep in her bones, she knew. "No," Mira said. "There's no one else." The police finished their investigation 40 minutes later. They took photographs, collected samples, documented the damage with professional efficiency. Officer Chen gave Mira a card with a case number and a recommendation to change her locks, though the broken door frame made that somewhat pointless. When they'd gone, Mira stood alone in the wreckage and tried to figure out what to do next. Her phone buzzed. A text from Luca. The offer stands. My place is secure, private, and has actual working locks. No pressure, just available. Another text, this one from Daniel. Hotel reservations made under my name at the Riverside. Room 412. Key at front desk. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just be safe. Mira looked at both messages, then around at her destroyed apartment, at the shredded clothes and broken furniture and spray-painted threat, at the ruined dance shoes that represented years of her life reduced to trash. She thought about trust and what it cost, about the different kinds of danger in the world, and which ones she was willing to face. Then she picked up her keys and her purse, two of the few things that hadn't been destroyed, and headed downstairs. Both men waited on the sidewalk, standing on opposite sides of the entrance like opposing magnets. Marco stood near Luca, arms crossed, watching Daniel with undisguised suspicion. Mira walked past Daniel without a word. She stopped in front of Luca. Your place, she said. But we need to talk. About the email monitoring, about what exactly protection means, about all of it. Agreed, Luca said immediately. Mira, think about this, Daniel called after her. Once you're in his world completely, it becomes very hard to get out. Mira turned back. Daniel, I appreciate the concern, I really do. But you made your choice years ago when you decided I wasn't worth the effort. I'm making mine now. And unlike you, I'm choosing someone who didn't wait until it was convenient to care. She got into Luca's car. Marco drove while Luca sat in the back beside her, maintaining a careful distance. Where are we going? Mira asked. Penthouse downtown, 24th floor, good security, better locks than that warehouse space. Luca glanced at her. You can have your own room, your own space. I just want you somewhere I know you're safe. Why? The question came out sharper than Mira intended. Why do you care so much? We've known each other for 2 weeks. I'm your dance instructor. That's it. Is it? I don't know. You tell me. Mira turned to face him fully. Because from where I'm sitting, this stopped being about tango lessons somewhere around the second scandal. So what am I to you, Luca? Really? Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. 5 years ago, I learned that vulnerability kills, that letting people close gives them the power to destroy you. So I built walls, perfect, unbreakable walls. I controlled everything, my business, my emotions, my body, and the tremor was a reminder every single day that I'd failed at that control. He paused, looking out the window at the city lights sliding past. Then you danced with me. And for the first time since the attack, I felt something other than fear when someone touched me. I felt, he searched for the word, possibility. The possibility that maybe trust wasn't synonymous with weakness, that maybe letting someone in didn't automatically mean letting them destroy you. Mira's throat tightened. Luca, you asked what you are to me. You're proof that I'm not as broken as I thought, that the person I was before the attack isn't completely gone, that maybe, just maybe, I can have something real again instead of just existing behind walls. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were devastating in their honesty. So yes, this is about more than tango lessons. It has been from the moment you took my hand. The car pulled up to a sleek building, all glass and steel and obvious wealth. Marco got out first, scanning the street before opening Mira's door. She stepped out into the cool night air, her mind reeling. The penthouse was everything Mira expected, expensive, tasteful, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But there were small touches that surprised her. Books on the shelves, well-worn and clearly read. A guitar in one corner, the kind of casual placement that suggested it was actually played. Photographs on the wall showing a younger Luca with people who shared his features. Family, probably, from before his world became what it was now. Guest room is this way, Luca said, leading her down a hallway. Private bathroom, and the locks work from the inside if you need privacy. There are clothes in the closet, different sizes, just in case. Sophia keeps them stocked for emergencies. The room was beautiful and impersonal, designed for temporary occupants. Mira set down her purse and turned to find Luca standing in the doorway, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. "Thank you," she said. "For this. For everything." "Don't thank me yet. Isabella's attack on your apartment means she's done with subtlety. What comes next will be worse." "Then we'll be ready." "Will we?" Luca stepped into the room, closing the distance between them. "Because I need you to understand something, Mira. The training we did today, the defensive techniques, those aren't theoretical exercises. There's a very real possibility you'll need to use them. That someone will try to hurt you and you'll have to hurt them first. Can you do that?" Mira thought about the spray-painted message on her wall, about Isabella's cold smile and calculated cruelty, about the systematic destruction of everything she owned. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." You sound certain." "I am. Because Isabella made a mistake tonight. She thought destroying my things would make me afraid, would make me run. But all she did was remove the last thing tying me to a life that wasn't working anyway." Mira met Luca's eyes. "I have nothing left to lose except the choice I've made. And I'm not giving that up." Something shifted in Luca's expression. Relief, maybe, or recognition. He reached out slowly, giving Mira time to step back, and when she didn't, his hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. "You're not what I expected," he said softly. "What did you expect?" "Someone fragile, someone who needed saving, someone I could keep at a distance while pretending intimacy." His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. "But you're none of those things. You're strong and stubborn and absolutely terrifying in the best possible way." Mira's breath caught. "Luca!" The moment his lips touched hers, Mira stopped thinking. The kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning, and she answered by rising on her toes and pulling him closer. Luca's arms came around her, solid and sure, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like falling and flying simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," he murmured. "Everything was already complicated." "Fair point." He pulled back slightly, and Mira could see the conflict in his expression. "I should let you rest. You've had a difficult day. Stay." The word was out before Mira could reconsider it. "Just for a while. I don't want to be alone right now." Luca nodded and sat on the edge of the bed, and Mira sat beside him. They stayed like that for a long time, shoulders touching, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city spread below them like a field of stars. "What happens now?" Mira asked finally. "Now we prepare. Sophia will increase your training, teach you more practical skills. Marco will upgrade security protocols, and Luca paused. "I'm going to make it very clear to Isabella that touching you again will have consequences she won't survive." "That sounds like a declaration of war." "It is. She just doesn't know it yet." Luca's hand found Mira's in the darkness. "But you need to be certain. Once this starts, there's no going back. You'll be marked, targeted, part of this world whether you want to be or not. If you have any doubts, now is the time to walk away." Mira thought about her ruined apartment, about Daniel's warnings, about the smart choice that would keep her safe and small and invisible. Then she thought about Luca's trembling hands growing steady, about teaching someone to trust again, about mattering to someone who'd forgotten how to let people matter. "I'm certain," she said. Luca lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, the gesture so old-fashioned and genuine that Mira felt something crack open in her chest. "Then we fight," he said simply. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse of her own, Isabella Cortez received a photograph. It showed Mira and Luca entering his building, her hand in his, both of them looking at each other like the rest of the world had ceased to exist. Isabella smiled and made a phone call. "It's time," she said when the other end picked up. "Move to phase 2. The response was brief, professional, and final. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. Mira woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere beyond the bedroom door. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the previous night came flooding back, the destroyed apartment, the choice she'd made, the kiss that had changed everything. She found Luca in the kitchen, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, reading something on his tablet while a professional-grade espresso machine hissed in the background. He looked up when she entered, and something warm flickered in his expression before settling back into careful neutrality. Coffee? He offered. Please. He poured her a cup with the kind of precise movements that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed, and Mira felt the echo of last night's kiss in that small contact. Sophia will be here in an hour, Luca said, returning to his tablet. She wants to run through more advanced scenarios. After what happened to your apartment, we need to accelerate your training. Luca, about last night. We don't have to talk about it. His voice was carefully controlled. You were upset. I was there. Things happened. We can leave it at that if you prefer. Mira set down her coffee cup with enough force to make him look up. Is that what you want? To pretend it didn't mean anything? I want you to have the space to make decisions without feeling pressured. Last night was complicated. You'd just been through trauma. You were vulnerable, and He stopped, jaw tightening. I took advantage of that. You didn't take advantage of anything. I kissed you back, if you remember. I asked you to stay. Mira crossed her arms. So don't rewrite what happened to make yourself feel guilty. If you regret it, say so. But don't put that on me. Luca was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. I don't regret it. I regret that it happened when you'd just lost everything. I regret that it might make you feel obligated to stay when leaving would be safer. I'm not staying because of a kiss. I'm staying because I choose to. Mira moved closer to him. And if we're going to do this, whatever this is, then we need to be honest with each other. No more careful distance. No more pretending. Just truth. Truth, Luca repeated, like he was testing the word. All right. Truth. I haven't stopped thinking about you since the moment we danced at that gala. Every session, every conversation, every time you look at me like I'm not a monster, it breaks down walls I spent years building. And that terrifies me more than Isabella, more than any threat I've ever faced, because I don't know how to protect myself from you. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and honest. You don't have to protect yourself from me, Mira said softly. That's not how this works. How what works? Trust, partnership, whatever we're becoming. She reached for his hand and he let her take it. I'm not here to hurt you, Luca. I'm here because you're the first person in years who's made me feel like I matter, like what I do has value beyond just getting through another day. Luca's thumb traced circles against her palm, the gesture almost unconscious. Isabella will use this against us. She'll see it as weakness, as leverage. The moment she understands what you've become to me, the target on your back gets exponentially larger. Then we make sure she never gets close enough to take a shot. Before Luca could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. It's Marco. I need to take this. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, and his face went completely blank, the kind of blank that meant something very bad had happened. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Secure the perimeter and don't let anyone leave. He ended the call and looked at Mira. I have to go. There's been an incident at one of my warehouses. Stay here with Sophia. She's on her way up now. Don't leave the building. Don't answer the door for anyone except her. And if anything feels wrong, call me immediately. What kind of incident? The kind that's designed to draw me out and distract me. Luca grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. Isabella's making her next move. This is just the opening gambit. He was gone before Mira could ask anything else, the penthouse suddenly feeling much larger and emptier without him. Sophia arrived 10 minutes later, her expression grim and her shoulder holster more visible than usual. Change of plans? She said without preamble. We're not training here today. Too exposed, too predictable. Grab whatever you need. We're going somewhere more secure. Luca said to stay here. Luca isn't here, and his instructions were based on Isabella playing defense. She's not. She's attacking, which means we adapt. Sophia's eyes were hard. The warehouse fire was a distraction. While Luca is dealing with that, Isabella's people are moving into position around this building. We have maybe a 10-minute window to get you out before that window closes. Mira's heart rate spiked. How do you know this? Because I used to work for Isabella. I know how she thinks, how she operates, and what her next 3 moves will be. Sophia moved to the window and looked down at the street below. There's a service entrance in the basement. Marco has a car waiting. We leave now, or we don't leave at all. Every instinct Mira had screamed that this was wrong. Luca had told her to stay put. He'd told her to wait for his call. But Sophia was already moving, already pulling out her phone and typing rapidly. I'm texting Marco the route, Sophia said. He'll meet us at the car, but we need to move now, Mira. I'm not asking. The authority in her voice made the decision for her. Mira grabbed her purse, still the only personal possession she had left, and followed Sophia to the elevator. They rode down in silence, Sophia watching the floor numbers descend with the intensity of someone calculating odds. When they reached the basement level, she pulled her weapon, a compact handgun that looked well used, and stepped out first. Stay behind me. Move when I move. Stop when I stop. The basement was a maze of concrete and flickering fluorescent lights, filled with the kind of shadows that could hide anything. Sophia navigated it with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the layout, moving quickly but carefully through the underground parking area. The car was exactly where she'd said it would be, a black SUV with tinted windows, engine already running. But Marco wasn't in the driver's seat. A woman Mira had never seen before sat behind the wheel, wearing sunglasses despite being underground and smiling like she'd just won something. Sophia's weapon came up immediately. Get away from the vehicle. Now, is that any way to greet an old friend? The woman's voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of amusement. I thought we could have a civil conversation. Where's Marco? Dealing with a small emergency at the warehouse. Such a tragic fire. I do hope no one was seriously injured. The woman's smile widened. Isabella sends her regards, by the way. She'd like to extend an invitation to Miss Vance, a chance to talk, woman to woman, without all the masculine posturing getting in the way. Not happening, Sophia said flatly. I wasn't asking you, dear. I was asking her. The woman's attention shifted to Mira. What do you say, Miss Vance? Wouldn't you like to hear Isabella's side of the story? Understand why she's been so adamant about removing you from Luca's life. I know why, Mira said, finding her voice. Because she's scared. The woman's smile faltered slightly. Scared? Of you? My dear girl, you're a dancer. Isabella Cortez doesn't fear dancers. She fears what I represent, change, the possibility that Luca might actually move on from the past instead of staying frozen in it. That's terrifying to someone whose entire power structure depends on people never healing. Mira stepped forward, ignoring Sophia's warning hand on her arm. So no, I don't need to hear Isabella's side of the story. I've already heard it every time she's tried to destroy me. Every leaked contract, every broken relationship, every attempt to make me feel small and worthless. That's her side of the story, and I'm not interested. The woman's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty of those. One more won't kill me. Actually, it might. The woman reached for something in her jacket, and Sophia's weapon tracked the movement instantly. Hands where I can see them, Sophia ordered. Relax, I'm just delivering a message. The woman slowly pulled out a phone and tossed it to Mira, who caught it reflexively. Isabella wants you to see something. Consider it a taste of what happens when you ignore invitations. The phone's screen showed a video feed. It took Mira a moment to understand what she was seeing, then her blood ran cold. It was Daniel. He was tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned building, his face bruised and bleeding. Behind him stood two men Mira didn't recognize, both armed. Isabella has your ex-boyfriend, the woman said pleasantly. Found him poking around where he shouldn't have been, asking questions about her operations. Such a curious man. That curiosity is going to get him killed unless you convince Luca to back down. This is insane, Mira breathed. Daniel is a prosecutor. Kidnapping him will bring every law enforcement agency in the state down on Isabella's head. Only if anyone finds out, and they won't, because you're going to make sure Luca accepts Isabella's terms. The woman gestured to the phone. The live feed continues for the next 6 hours. After that, your ex-boyfriend becomes a tragic casualty of his own investigative ambitions. Unless, of course, Luca agrees to step back from the city's eastern territory and acknowledge Isabella's supremacy in that region. Luca will never agree to that. Then Mr. Reed dies, and you get to live with the knowledge that you could have saved him but chose your new boyfriend instead. The woman started the SUV. You have 6 hours. I suggest you use them wisely. She drove off, leaving Mira and Sophia standing in the basement with a phone displaying Daniel's terrified face and a deadline ticking down. Sophia immediately pulled out her own phone and called Luca. The conversation was brief and intense, Sophia relaying what had just happened while moving them both toward the stairwell. He's coming back, she said when she hung up. But he says Isabella's people are already surrounding the building. We're trapped here until he can get security in place. Mira stared at the phone in her hand, at Daniel's bruised face and frightened eyes. She thought about all the reasons she had to hate him. The abandonment, the opportunism, the way he'd only cared when it served his career. But she also remembered the 3 years they'd spent together, the moments of genuine connection buried under layers of resentment. "We have to help him," she said. "We don't have to do anything except stay alive," Sophia countered. Daniel knew the risks when he started investigating Isabella. He's a prosecutor. This is literally his job. You're a civilian who got caught in the crossfire. There's a difference. He's there because of me, because he thought he was protecting me. He's there because he's ambitious and saw an opportunity to take down a major crime organization. Don't romanticize his motives. Sophia guided Mira back toward the elevator. "Luca will handle this, he always does." But when they reached the penthouse and Luca arrived 20 minutes later, his expression told Mira everything she needed to know about how bad the situation actually was. "The warehouse fire was cover for a coordinated attack," he said, moving immediately to his laptop and pulling up security feeds. "Isabella has been planning this for weeks. The attacks on you, the escalating pressure, all of it was designed to make me reactive, to put me in a position where I'd have to choose between protecting you and protecting my territory." "And now she's added Daniel to the equation," Sophia said. Luca's jaw tightened. "Reed is a complication, but he's not the primary objective. Isabella knows I don't care about him. This is about forcing Mira to feel guilty, to pressure me into making concessions I wouldn't otherwise make." "So we just let him die?" Mira's voice was sharper than she intended. "We do what's strategically sound. Giving Isabella what she wants doesn't save Reed. It just shows her that taking hostages works. She'll do it again, and next time it might be someone I actually care about." Luca's eyes met Mira's, and the implication was clear. "I'm not giving her that leverage. There has to be another option." "There is." I call her bluff. "Isabella doesn't want to kill a prosecutor. That brings heat she can't afford. This is theater, designed to make you panic and force my hand. And if you're wrong, if she actually kills him," Luca's expression didn't change, "then she'll have made her last mistake, and I'll make sure she regrets it for whatever brief time she has left. But I won't be manipulated, not even for Reed's life." The coldness in his voice sent a chill through Mira. This was the other side of Luca, the crime lord, the strategist, the man who made decisions based on power dynamics rather than human decency. She'd known this side existed, had even admired the strength it represented, but seeing it directed at a situation involving someone she'd once cared about made it feel different, brutal. "I want to talk to her," Mira said. "Absolutely not. Not in person. On the phone. Give me a chance to reason with her, woman to woman, like her messenger said." Mira pulled out the phone Isabella's operative had given her. "Maybe if she hears directly from me that I'm not backing down, she'll realize this approach isn't working. Or she'll use the conversation to further manipulate you." Luca shook his head. "Isabella is a master at reading people, finding their weaknesses, exploiting them. You can't out-negotiate her, Mira." "Maybe not. But I can make her understand that I'm not afraid of her." Sophia stepped forward. "Actually, that might work. Not the reasoning part. Isabella doesn't respond to reason. But if Mira can project strength, can show that the intimidation tactics aren't working, it might make Isabella recalculate." "It's too risky," Luca insisted. "Everything's risky," Mira countered. "But sitting here doing nothing while Daniel's life is on a timer doesn't feel like the right answer either. Let me try. If it doesn't work, we go with your plan. But at least give me the chance." Luca studied her for a long moment, conflict clear in his expression. Finally, he nodded. 5 minutes. I'll be listening, and if she says anything that sounds like a trap, I'm ending the call." Mira found Isabella's contact information in the phone's recent calls and hit dial. The line connected after 2 rings. "Miss Vance?" Isabella's voice was warm, almost friendly. "I'm so glad you decided to reach out. I was hoping we could have a more civilized conversation. Where is he? Where's Daniel?" "Safe, for now. Uncomfortable, certainly, but unharmed. I'm not a monster, despite what Luca may have told you. You kidnapped a prosecutor. That's pretty much the definition of monstrous. I detained an investigator who was harassing my business associates and making unfounded accusations. There's a difference." Isabella's tone remained pleasant. But we're not here to discuss Mr. Reed. We're here to discuss you. What about me? I want to understand what you see in Luca DeSantis. What makes a talented dancer throw away her career, her reputation, her safety, for a man whose hands are stained with more blood than you could possibly imagine? His hands aren't what matter to me. No? Then what does matter? The money, the protection, the fantasy that you're somehow special, that you're the one woman who can fix a broken man? Mira thought about the tremor in Luca's hands, about the way he'd said please, about teaching him to trust again. I matter to him, she said simply, not for what I can do for him, not for what I represent to other people, but for who I am. And that's something you can't understand because you've never let anyone matter to you that way. There was silence on the other end of the line. When Isabella spoke again, her voice had lost its pleasant veneer. You think you know me? You think you understand what it takes to survive in this world? I think you're lonely. I think you've built an empire but forgotten how to build a life. And I think you see Luca moving forward with someone while you're still frozen in the same power struggles, and it makes you feel left behind. Careful, Miss Vance. You're projecting. But am I? Then why do you care so much about me? If I'm really just a nobody dancer, if I'm really that insignificant, why waste all this energy trying to remove me from Luca's life? Why not just ignore me and let the relationship run its course naturally? Another pause. Mira could hear Isabella breathing on the other end, could almost feel the woman recalculating. Because Luca with a weakness is manageable, Isabella said finally. Luca whose healing is dangerous. He becomes unpredictable, harder to control, willing to take risks he wouldn't otherwise consider. And in our world, unpredictable men cause chaos. Maybe this world needs chaos. You really believe that? You think tearing down the structures we've built, the balances we've maintained, will make things better? You're naive. I'm honest, and I'm not going anywhere, no matter how many apartments you destroy, or contracts you leak, or ex-boyfriends you kidnap. So you can either accept that and find a way to coexist, or you can keep fighting a battle you're not going to win. Bold words for someone whose ex-boyfriend has a gun to his head. Mira's hands tightened on the phone. If you kill Daniel, Luca will come for you. Not eventually, not strategically, immediately. And we both know you're not ready for that fight. Are you willing to bet Mr. Reed's life on that assessment? Mira looked at Luca, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She thought about Daniel's ambition, his abandonment, the way he'd only come back into her life when it served his career. She thought about the choice Isabella was forcing her to make, and what it said about who she was becoming. Yes, Mira said. I am. Because you're not going to kill him. You're going to let him go, maybe roughed up enough to scare him away from investigating you further, but alive. Because killing him brings consequences you can't control, and control is everything to you. The line went silent. Mira could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Luca's eyes on her, could sense Sophia's tension in the background. When Isabella spoke again, her voice was cold and final. You've made your choice. Now live with it. The call ended. Mira stared at the phone, her hands shaking slightly. Sophia immediately pulled up security feeds on her own device, checking for any movement around the building. Luca crossed the space to Mira and took the phone from her hands. That was either brilliant or incredibly reckless, he said quietly. Which one do you think it was? Both. His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone in a gesture that was becoming familiar. But you were right. Isabella won't kill Reed. She's too smart for that. How can you be sure? Because I know her. And despite everything else, she's a strategist first. Reed dies, and she loses every advantage she just gained. The DA's office would mobilize, the police would increase pressure, and the delicate balance she spent years maintaining would collapse. Luca's expression was grim. She'll release him, but this isn't over. He was right. 3 hours later, Daniel was found wandering near the waterfront, beaten badly enough to require hospitalization, but alive. The police investigation went nowhere. Daniel claimed he'd been robbed, stuck to that story despite obvious inconsistencies, and refused to name his attackers. But he also called Mira from his hospital bed, his voice raw and shaken. You were right, he said without preamble. About everything. I thought I was helping, thought I could take down Isabella and somehow save you in the process. All I did was make things worse. Daniel, I'm dropping the investigation, citing health concerns, taking a leave of absence, and I'm leaving the city." He paused. "I can't fight these people, Mira. I thought I could, thought the law was enough. But it's not. Not against them. I'm sorry this happened to you. Don't be. I brought it on myself, but promise me something." "What?" "Be careful. Isabella let me live as a message, but that message wasn't mercy. It was a demonstration of power. Next time, she might not be so restrained." The call ended, and Mira was left with the uncomfortable knowledge that Daniel was probably right. That night, Luca insisted on upgrading Mira's training. They met at the warehouse space, now with significantly enhanced security, and Sophia put her through scenarios that were increasingly realistic and violent. "Again," Sophia barked after Mira successfully defended against a simulated attack for the 4th time. "But this time, I'm not stopping until you actually hurt me. No pulling punches, no hesitation. Real stakes." They went through the sequence again. Sophia came at her with the kind of aggression that made Mira's training kick in automatically. She used a sharp pivot to redirect Sophia's momentum, followed with a gancho that would have shattered a knee if she'd made full contact. Sophia stepped back, breathing hard, and nodded approvingly. "Better. You're starting to think like a fighter instead of a dancer." "I am a dancer. You're both now. The sooner you accept that, the better chance you have of surviving what comes next." Luca watched from the edge of the space, his expression unreadable. When Sophia finally called an end to the session, he approached Mira with a towel and water bottle. "You're getting good at this," he said. "I don't want to be good at this. I want to dance, not fight." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Luca handed her the water. "And Mira? What you said on the phone to Isabella about mattering to me, you were right. You do. More than is probably wise, more than is certainly safe, but it's true. Is this the part where you tell me it's too dangerous to continue? Where you send me away for my own protection?" "No. This is the part where I tell you that tomorrow night there's a meeting. The city's major families gathering to discuss territory disputes and business arrangements. Isabella will be there, and so will I." Luca's eyes held hers. "I want you to come with me." "As what? Your date? Your bodyguard?" "As my partner. The woman I trust. The person who stands beside me when I face my enemies." His hand found hers. "It's a statement, and statements have consequences. But I'm done hiding what you mean to me. Done pretending you're just my dance instructor or cultural consultant or whatever convenient fiction we've been maintaining. If Isabella wants war, she can have it, but she'll understand exactly what she's fighting for." Mira thought about all the reasons to say no. About Daniel's warning, about the demolished apartment, about the systematic destruction of her old life. She thought about safety and smart choices and the path of least resistance. Then she thought about Luca's hand in hers, steady and sure, and the way learning to trust again felt like the bravest thing either of them had ever done. "What time should I be ready?" she asked. Luca's smile was small but genuine. 7. "And Mira, wear something that makes a statement. I seem to remember you saying that before. This time, the statement is different. This time, you're not just my guest. You're my equal. And everyone needs to see that." The next evening, Mira found another dress waiting in her room at Luca's penthouse. This one black, elegant, with a slit that suggested both sophistication and danger. There was a note attached in Luca's handwriting. "For dancing through war." She dressed carefully, pulled her hair back in a way that showed her face clearly, and checked her reflection one final time. The woman looking back at her wasn't the invisible dancer from the gala anymore. This woman had steel in her spine and certainty in her eyes. This woman was ready for whatever came next. The meeting was held in a private club that reeked of old money and older secrets. Mira walked in beside Luca, her hand tucked into the crook of his elbow, and felt every eye in the room assess and judge and calculate. Isabella stood near the bar, wearing red and smiling like a shark. When she saw them enter together, something flickered in her expression, surprise maybe, or grudging respect. "Luca," she said as they approached, "and Miss Vance. How unexpected." "Is it?" Luca's voice was mild, but his eyes were hard. "I thought I'd made my position clear." "You've made many things clear, though I have to admit bringing her to a family meeting is bold, reckless even. Isabella's gaze moved to Mira. These gatherings have rules, Miss Vance. Rules about who speaks, who makes decisions, who has the right to be present. As someone who isn't family, you're here on sufferance. I hope you understand that. I understand that rules can change, Mira said calmly, especially when they're outdated. The room went quiet. Several of the men standing nearby turned to stare, their expressions ranging from shock to amusement. Isabella's smile widened, sharp and dangerous. Did she just challenge your authority? Yes. Luca's hand settled against Mira's back, the gesture both protective and possessive. And before you respond, understand something. Mira isn't just here as my companion. She's here as someone I trust with my life, my business, and my future. Attack her, and you attack me. Disrespect her, and you disrespect me. Are we clear? The silence that followed was profound. Mira could feel the weight of dozens of assessments being recalculated, alliances being reconsidered, and power dynamics shifting in real time. Isabella looked between them, her expression finally settling into something like understanding. Crystal clear, she said softly. Though you understand what this means, Luca. If she's your equal, she's fair game for the same challenges and consequences as any of us. No special protection, no exemptions. I wouldn't want any, Mira said before Luca could respond. If I'm going to stand here, I stand on my own merit, not his protection. Isabella's eyes glittered with something that might have been approval or might have been malice. It was impossible to tell. Then welcome to the family, Miss Vance, she said, raising her glass in a mock toast. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting. And in that moment, standing in a room full of dangerous people who just accepted her as one of their own, Mira realized that she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. The dancer had become a player, and the game had just begun. The meeting lasted 3 hours, and Mira spent most of it learning the language of power in a world where nothing was ever said directly. Threats were delivered as compliments. Alliances were forged over drinks. Territory was negotiated through stories about mutual acquaintances who'd made poor decisions and paid dearly for them. Isabella watched Mira throughout, her expression calculating. When the formal business concluded and the gathering dissolved into smaller conversations, she approached with 2 glasses of wine. For you, Isabella said, offering one to Mira. A peace offering, if you will. Mira took the glass but didn't drink. I'm not sure we're at peace. We're not, but we've reached an understanding, which is more valuable. Isabella sipped her own wine, her eyes never leaving Mira's face. You impressed me tonight. Most people in your position would have hidden behind Luca, let him speak for them, maintained the fiction that they're just along for the ride. But you stood up, claimed your space. That takes courage. Or stupidity. In this world, they're often the same thing. Isabella's smile was sharp. But I want you to understand something. My war was never really with you. It was with what you represented, the idea that Luca could move forward, could heal, could become someone I couldn't predict or control. That scared me more than I was willing to admit. And now? Now I realize that trying to stop change is like trying to stop the tide. Exhausting and ultimately futile. Isabella set down her glass. So I'm proposing something different, not friendship. We're not there and probably never will be. But mutual respect. You stay out of my territory, I stay out of yours. Luca makes his choices, I make mine. And we acknowledge that this city is big enough for all of us. Just like that? After everything, the leaked contracts, my apartment, Daniel, you're just going to walk away? I'm going to stop wasting energy on a fight I can't win. There's a difference. Isabella's expression turned serious. But understand this, Mira Vance. The respect I'm offering you tonight was earned through strength. You stood your ground. You didn't break. And you made it clear you're not going anywhere. That matters in this world. Weakness doesn't get respect. It gets eliminated. Remember that. She walked away before Mira could respond, leaving her standing alone with an untouched glass of wine and a head full of questions. Luca found her a few minutes later, his hand settling against the small of her back with familiar ease. What did Isabella want? He asked. To declare a truce, I think, or at least a ceasefire. Mira set down the wine glass. She said the war was never really about me. It wasn't. It was about control, about Isabella realizing she couldn't dictate my future anymore. Luca's thumb traced small circles against her spine. But the fact that she's backing down means she sees you as a real threat. Someone with power in your own right. That's both good and dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. Yes, but we're navigating it together. Luca leaned closer, his voice dropping. Are you ready to leave? We've made our statement. Staying longer is just unnecessary risk. Mira nodded, and they moved toward the exit. But before they could reach the door, a man Mira didn't recognize stepped into their path. He was older, 60s probably, with the kind of expensive suit that suggested old money and older power. Luca, the man said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. A word before you go. Councilman Ferraro, Luca's tone was carefully neutral. I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. I make a point of attending these gatherings when they involve my interests. Ferraro's eyes shifted to Mira, assessing. And who is this? Mira Vance, my partner. Partner. Ferraro repeated the word like he was tasting it. How modern. I remember when we used more traditional terms, less ambiguous. Ambiguity has its advantages, Luca said coolly. Indeed, though I wonder if Miss Vance understands what being your partner actually means. The obligations, the expectations, the consequences. Ferraro smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. This world isn't kind to those who enter it unprepared. I'm more prepared than I look, Mira said, meeting his gaze directly. Are you? Because from where I stand, you're a civilian who's stumbled into something far beyond her understanding. A dancer playing at being a power broker. It's charming in its way, also dangerous. Is there a point to this conversation? Luca's voice had gone cold. The point is that the council has concerns about your judgment, about your priorities, about whether personal entanglements are affecting your business decisions. Ferraro's attention never left Mira. We're wondering if Miss Vance's presence in your life represents a liability we can't afford. The threat was clear even through the polite language. Mira felt Luca tense beside her, felt the dangerous energy building. The council's concerns are noted, Luca said, his voice deadly quiet, and dismissed. My personal life is not subject to committee review. Everything is subject to review when it affects our collective interests. You know the rules, Luca. We maintain power through unity, through presenting a united front. When one of us becomes unpredictable, I'm not unpredictable. I'm evolving. There's a difference. Luca stepped forward, and several people in the vicinity suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. And if the council has concerns about my judgment, they're welcome to address them directly rather than through veiled threats delivered at social gatherings. Ferraro's expression hardened. Careful, Luca. You're not so powerful that you can afford to alienate everyone. Neither are you. Remember that. Luca took Mira's hand. We're leaving. Tell the council I'll be available for a formal discussion next week, on neutral ground with all parties present. If they have concerns, they can voice them properly. He led Mira out before Ferraro could respond, Marco falling into step behind them as they exited into the cool night air. What was that about? Mira asked once they were in the car. Politics. The council is a group of older family heads who think they still run this city. They don't, but they have enough influence to be problematic. Luca's jaw was tight. Ferraro was testing boundaries, seeing if they could use you as leverage against me. And can they? Not if you can defend yourself, which is why, he paused, seeming to make a decision. Tomorrow, we're going to meet with someone, a teacher of a different kind, someone who can help you understand the strategic side of this world, not just the physical defense. Who? My aunt, Vittoria DeSantis. She's been running parts of the family business since before I was born, and she's one of the few people in this city who actually scares Isabella. Luca's expression softened slightly. If anyone can teach you how to navigate this world without losing yourself, it's her. The next day, they drove to an estate outside the city, old money wrapped in ivy-covered walls and careful landscaping. The woman who met them at the door looked nothing like what Mira expected. Vittoria DeSantis was in her 70s, elegant in the way that came from bone-deep confidence rather than expensive clothes. Her eyes were sharp and assessing, and when she smiled at Luca, genuine warmth transformed her face. Nephew, she said, embracing him. You've stayed away too long. I've been busy. So I hear. The whole city is talking about your dancer. Vittoria's attention shifted to Mira, and the assessment was immediate and thorough. Come inside, child. We have much to discuss. The interior of the house was beautiful, but lived in, filled with books and art, and the kind of comfortable elegance that only came with time. Vittoria led them to a sitting room overlooking a garden, poured tea with practiced grace, and settled into a chair with the posture of someone used to being obeyed. So, she said, addressing Mira directly, you're the woman who's caused such chaos in my nephew's carefully ordered life. I didn't mean to cause chaos, Mira said. The best kind never is intentional. It simply happens when something real enters a world built on carefully maintained fictions. Vittoria sipped her tea. Luca tells me you need education, help understanding how this world operates beyond the violence and threats. I need to know how to protect myself without becoming someone I'm not. Ah, the eternal question. Vittoria set down her cup. Let me tell you something about this world, my dear. It operates on three principles: power, perception, and pragmatism. Power is what you can actually do: your resources, your skills, your alliances. Perception is what people believe you can do, which is often more important than reality. And pragmatism is understanding when to use which. Over the next 3 hours, Vittoria taught Mira more about the city's power structure than she'd learned in all her previous experiences combined. She explained the web of families, the territories, the unspoken rules that governed everything from business deals to personal relationships. She taught Mira how to read a room, how to identify real threats versus performative ones, how to make alliances without giving away too much power. The key, Vittoria said as the afternoon light began to fade, is to remember that you're not trying to become one of them. You're creating your own position, your own power base. The moment you start imitating instead of innovating, you've already lost. How do I do that when I'm starting from nothing? You're not starting from nothing. You have skills they don't. You have Luca's trust, which is worth more than most people's armies. And you have something even more valuable. You're underestimated. Vittoria's smile was sharp. Never waste the advantage of being underestimated. When they finally left, Mira's head was spinning with information. Luca drove them back to the city in thoughtful silence, and it wasn't until they were nearly to the penthouse that he spoke. My aunt likes you. She doesn't like many people. How can you tell? She gave you 3 hours of her time and actual advice instead of polite platitudes. That's her version of adoption. Luca glanced at her. She's right, you know, about using what makes you different. You don't have to become like them. You just have to become more effectively yourself. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Luca's penthouse, looking out at the city and thinking about all the ways her life had changed in less than a month. From invisible dancer to partner of one of the city's most powerful men. From victim to player. From afraid to dangerous. Can't sleep? Luca's voice came from behind her. Mira turned to find him standing in the doorway of his bedroom, wearing sweatpants and nothing else. The scar across his chest was visible in the dim light, a reminder of old wounds and hard lessons. Too much to think about, she admitted. I know the feeling. He crossed to stand beside her at the window. I've been thinking about what Ferrato said, about whether you're a liability. And I've decided I don't care. Even if you were, which you're not, I wouldn't give you up. Not for the council, not for Isabella, not for anyone. Luca's hand found hers in the darkness. You asked me once what you were to me. I didn't have a good answer then, but I do now. What? You're the first real thing I've let into my life in 5 years. Everything else has been strategy, calculation, carefully managed relationships designed to serve specific purposes. But you, he turned to face her fully. You're real. And I'm done pretending that's a weakness instead of the greatest strength I have. Mira's breath caught. Luca, let me finish. Tomorrow, Isabella is hosting a charity event. Very public, very visible. She's invited both of us, and I think we should go. After what just happened? After the council's concerns? Because of what just happened. Because I want everyone to see that I'm not backing down, not hiding, not treating you like a secret I'm ashamed of. Luca's eyes held hers. I want to take you to that event and dance with you in front of everyone who's tried to tear us apart. I want to show them that they failed. Dance with me before you lose your temper, Mira quoted softly, remembering that first night at the gala. Exactly. Except this time, I'm not angry. I'm certain. His hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. Will you dance with me, Mira Vance? Not as my instructor, not as strategic theater, but as the woman I... He paused, seemed to gather courage. As the woman I love. The words hung in the air between them, more powerful than any threat or promise. Mira had known this was coming, had felt it building for weeks. But hearing him say it out loud, with such quiet certainty, made it real in a way nothing else could. Yes, she said simply. I'll dance with you. The kiss that followed was different from their first. This one carried the weight of everything they'd survived together, every battle fought and choice made. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. Fair warning, he murmured. Tomorrow is going to be dangerous. Isabella doesn't invite people to events without a reason, and I don't trust her sudden truce. Neither do I, but we'll handle it. Together. Together, Luca agreed and led her back to bed, where they talked until dawn, planning and strategizing, and occasionally forgetting the danger entirely in favor of simply being together. The charity event was held at the Meridian Hotel again, the same venue where Isabella had tried to auction off Mira's time. This time, Mira walked in wearing red, her hair down and her chin high. She'd learned enough from Vittoria to read the room immediately. The strategic positioning of allies and enemies, the careful choreography of who stood where, the subtle power plays happening in every conversation. Isabella greeted them at the entrance, wearing white and smiling like a cat with a secret. Luca, Mira, I'm so glad you could make it. Her eyes traveled over Mira's dress appreciatively. Red suits you, bold choice. I'm done with subtle, Mira said. I can see that. Isabella gestured toward the ballroom. The evening's entertainment will begin shortly. I think you'll find it interesting. They moved into the crowd, and Mira immediately felt the eyes on them. The whispers, the calculations. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen. The entertainment, when it began, was a tango demonstration. Professional dancers performing a piece that was technically brilliant but emotionally cold. Mira watched critically, noting the perfect technique that somehow missed the point of the dance entirely. When the demonstration ended, Isabella took the microphone. Beautiful, wasn't it? Though I've been told by certain sources that we have even greater talent in the room tonight. Her eyes found Mira in the crowd. Miss Vance, I don't suppose you'd be willing to show us what professional tango actually looks like. You and Luca were quite memorable at the gala. I'm sure everyone would love to see you dance again. It was a trap. It had to be. Isabella didn't make gestures like this without ulterior motives. But Mira thought about what Vittoria had said about never wasting the advantage of being underestimated, about creating her own power instead of reacting to others. I'd be happy to, she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. Though I have one condition. Isabella's smile widened. And what would that be? You dance too, not as a demonstration, as a competition. 3 minutes, same song, judges from neutral families, winner takes all. The ballroom went silent. Isabella's expression flickered with surprise before settling back into calculated interest. And what exactly would the winner be taking? Mira glanced at Luca, who gave her a small nod of trust. If I win, you publicly acknowledge that your campaign against me was baseless and apologize for the damage to my reputation. If you win, I'll step back from Luca's public life for 6 months. Stay in the shadows, stop making waves, give you space to reestablish your position. It was a massive gamble. 6 months was an eternity in this world. Anything could change in that time. But Mira had spent weeks training with Sofia, learning how to make dance into something more than performance. She'd learned from Luca how to move with power instead of just grace. And she'd learned from Vittoria that sometimes the boldest move was the smartest one. Isabella considered the offer, her mind clearly racing through implications and possibilities. Finally, she smiled. Agreed. Choose your music, Miss Vance. Let's settle this properly. 20 minutes later, the ballroom had been cleared and a professional sound system set up. Mira stood on one side of the floor with Luca, running through last-minute preparations. Isabella stood on the opposite side with her own partner, a man Mira recognized from the family meeting, clearly chosen for his skill. Are you sure about this? Luca asked quietly. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Mira squeezed his hand. Trust me. Always? The music began. A traditional tango, slow at first, then building to intense crescendos. Isabella and her partner moved first, executing a flawless routine that showcased technical precision and dramatic flair. The crowd applauded appreciatively when they finished. Then it was Mira and Luca's turn. They took their positions, and Mira felt everything else fall away. This wasn't about competition or power plays or proving anything to anyone. This was about two people who'd learned to trust each other against impossible odds. Two people who'd transformed vulnerability into strength. The music started, and they moved. Luca led with absolute confidence, his hands steady and sure. Mira followed his lead but also challenged it, pushing him into more complex movements, testing the boundaries of their partnership. When he initiated a dip, she used the momentum to spin out and back, creating a visual moment that made the crowd gasp. They moved through sequences that combined traditional tango with the defensive techniques Sofia had taught them. Sharp pivots that looked decorative but could break holds, ganchos that could disable attackers, rotations that demonstrated both artistry and practical application. And through it all, Luca's hands never trembled. When they reached the final position, Mira let herself fall backward into a deep dip, trusting Luca completely to support her weight. The music swelled to its conclusion, and the ballroom erupted in applause. The judges, three family heads from neutral territories, conferred briefly before announcing their decision. The winner, by unanimous decision, is Luca DeSantis and Mira Vance. The applause was deafening. Mira straightened, breathing hard, and found Isabella watching from across the floor. For a long moment, their eyes met, and something passed between them. Not friendship, but acknowledgement. Isabella crossed the space and extended her hand. Well played, Miss Vance. You're better than I gave you credit for. Mira shook her hand. You were better than your reputation suggested. Technically perfect. You just danced like it was a performance instead of something real. And that's the difference between us, isn't it? You believe in the emotion, I believe in the strategy. Isabella's grip tightened slightly. But a deal is a deal. I'll make the statement tomorrow. Public apology. Acknowledgement that my concerns were overblown. You'll have your reputation back. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. Isabella released her hand and stepped back. Though I hope you understand what you've done here tonight. You've claimed your place in this world. There's no going back from that. I don't want to go back. Isabella nodded slowly, something like respect in her expression. Then welcome to the family, Miss Vance. For real this time. She walked away, leaving Mira standing in the center of the ballroom with Luca beside her and the weight of what she'd just accomplished settling over her shoulders. The statement Isabella made the next day was brief, but effective. She acknowledged that her concerns about Mira's influence had been based on incomplete information, apologized for any damage to Mira's professional reputation, and wished her well in her future endeavors. It was calculated and minimal, but it was public. And in this world, public mattered. The contracts that had been leaked were quietly scrubbed from the internet. The gossip sites moved on to other scandals. The clients who'd canceled bookings started reaching out again, suddenly interested in hiring the woman who'd won a public competition against Isabella Cortez. And through it all, Mira kept training with Sofia, kept learning from Vittoria, kept building her own power base that had nothing to do with Luca's protection and everything to do with her own capabilities. 3 months after the competition, Luca asked her to move into the penthouse permanently, not as a temporary safety measure, but as a partner in every sense of the word. I want you here, he said simply. Not because it's convenient or strategic, but because this doesn't feel like home anymore when you're not in it. Mira looked around the space that had become familiar over the weeks, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the books on the shelves, the guitar in the corner. She thought about her destroyed apartment, about the life she'd left behind, about all the ways she'd changed since that first night at the gala. Yes, she said, but on one condition. What? We add a proper dance floor. If I'm going to live here, I need space to practice, to teach, to remember who I was before all of this. Luca's smile was brilliant. Done. though I reserve the right to occasionally interrupt your practice sessions. Only if you're willing to learn new choreography. Always. They had the dance floor installed a week later, professional-grade hardwood in what had been a formal dining room they never used. Mira started teaching private lessons again, carefully selected clients who appreciated artistry over social climbing. She partnered with Vittoria on several charitable foundations, using her position to actually help people instead of just maintaining power. And every evening, she and Luca would dance, sometimes practicing new techniques, sometimes just moving together to music that reminded them of where they'd started. His hands never trembled anymore when he held her, and Mira had learned that trust earned in fire was the strongest kind there was. 6 months after the competition, the council called a formal meeting. Mira attended beside Luca, wearing a navy dress that was elegant but not ostentatious. She'd learned from Vittoria that true power didn't need to shout. Councilman Ferraro presided, his expression carefully neutral as he addressed the assembly. We're here to discuss concerns that were raised 6 months ago regarding Luca DeSantis and his personal entanglements. At that time, questions were posed about judgment, priorities, and potential liabilities. He paused, and his eyes moved to Mira. After careful observation and consideration, the council has reached a conclusion. Mira felt Luca tense beside her, felt the weight of every eye in the room. Miss Vance has proven herself to be an asset rather than a liability. Her strategic thinking, her ability to navigate complex situations, and her demonstrated skills have impressed several council members. Therefore, the concerns previously raised are hereby withdrawn. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was acknowledgement. And in this world, acknowledgement was currency. After the meeting, as they walked to the car, Luca took Mira's hand. "You did it," he said quietly. "You earned their respect on your own terms." "We did it. Together." Mira squeezed his hand. "That's how partnership works, right?" "That's exactly how it works." 1 year after that first dance at the gala, Mira stood in the same ballroom where everything had begun. But this time, she wasn't hired entertainment. She was hosting an event, a charity gala to support arts education for underprivileged youth, funded by a foundation she'd established with Vittoria's help. The ballroom was filled with familiar faces. Isabella, who'd become something like a friend over the months, though they'd never used that word. Sophia, who now taught self-defense classes at Mira's studio. Marco, who'd appointed himself unofficial security for all of Mira's events. Even Daniel, who'd sent a donation and a note saying he was glad she'd found what she was looking for. And Luca, standing beside her as she addressed the crowd, his hand resting against the small of her back with familiar ease. "Thank you all for coming," Mira said, her voice steady and confident. "A year ago, I was invisible in rooms like this. Just another dancer, just another person trying to survive in a city that didn't care whether I existed or not. But I learned something important over this past year." She paused, looking around at all the powerful people who'd once looked through her as if she didn't exist. "I learned that the most dangerous power isn't violence or wealth or control. It's trust. It's letting people in even when every instinct tells you to build walls. It's choosing partnership over isolation. It's being brave enough to be vulnerable and strong enough to heal." Mira's eyes found Luca's, and she smiled. "So tonight, we're not just raising money for a good cause. We're celebrating what happens when people choose connection over fear. When they choose to dance instead of fight. When they choose to build something real instead of just surviving." The applause was genuine this time, not the polite social obligation of her first gala. These people had seen her fight, had seen her earn her place, had seen her transform from invisible to undeniable. Later, after the speeches and the auction and the formal obligations, the orchestra began playing a tango. Luca extended his hand. "Dance with me?" he asked, echoing that first night with deliberate intention. "Before you lose your temper?" Mira responded with a smile. "No, because I love you. Because you're the strongest person I know. Because dancing with you is the best decision I've ever made." Mira took his hand, and they moved onto the floor. The crowd parted to watch them, just like they had a year ago. But this time, everything was different. They weren't strangers making a statement. They were partners who'd fought through hell and come out stronger on the other side. As they moved through the familiar steps, Mira thought about that first dance, about Luca's trembling hands and the pain in his eyes, about her own invisibility and desperate hope for something more. Now Luca's hands were steady. His eyes held joy instead of just controlled fear. And Mira had learned that being invisible had been a choice she'd made, consciously or not, to stay safe. Safety was overrated. Being real, being known, being brave enough to stand in the light and claim your space, that was what mattered. The music swelled toward its conclusion, and Luca spun her out and back in one final time. When they came to a stop, faces inches apart, he whispered something that only she could hear. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not stepping back, for taking my hand, for teaching me how to trust again." His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "For choosing me when walking away would have been so much easier." "It wouldn't have been easier," Mira corrected. "It would have been safer. There's a difference, and I'm done playing it safe." "Good, because I have plans for us that require a certain amount of calculated risk." "What kind of plans?" Luca smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "The kind that involved building something lasting. A life, not just a survival strategy. A partnership that matters. A future that's ours instead of just inherited or imposed." "That sounds dangerous." "The best things always are." The orchestra began another song, and they kept dancing. Around them, the ballroom filled with other couples, but Mira was only aware of Luca, of his hands sure and steady against her back, of the way they moved together like they'd been doing this for decades instead of just 1 year, of the trust that had been earned through fire and choice, and the simple act of not giving up when things got hard. From the edge of the dance floor, Isabella watched with something that might have been approval or might have been grudging respect. Vittoria stood beside her, and the two women exchanged a glance that suggested they'd come to some understanding about the future. Sophia leaned against a column, arms crossed, scanning the crowd for threats that weren't there tonight. She caught Mira's eye and nodded once, acknowledgement of how far her student had come. And somewhere in the crowd, the people who'd once dismissed Mira as decorative or invisible watched her command the center of the floor with the kind of presence that couldn't be bought or faked. They watched her dance with one of the city's most powerful men as an equal, not a possession. And they recalculated their assessments of who mattered and who didn't. When the song ended, Mira and Luca stayed in the final position for just a moment longer than necessary, unwilling to break the connection. "From now on," Luca said quietly, repeating words he'd said once before, "no one dances with you but me." "Is that a command?" Mira asked with a smile. "It's a promise, and a hope, and a question." His eyes held hers. "Will you let me be the only partner you need?" Mira thought about all the ways she could answer, all the practical considerations and strategic implications and careful qualifications that this world had taught her to consider. Instead, she gave him the simple truth. "Yes, but only if you promise the same thing in return." "I promise, for as long as you'll have me." "Then you're stuck with me for a very long time." Luca's smile was brilliant. "I can live with that." They danced 3 more songs before finally leaving the floor to let others have their moment. As they moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and making conversation, Mira felt the weight of what they'd built settle comfortably across her shoulders. She'd entered this world as a nobody, a dancer hired to be decorative, paid to be invisible, expected to know her place. She'd left that role behind through fire and choice, and the simple refusal to accept that her worth was determined by other people's expectations. Now she was Mira Vance, partner to Luca DeSantis, founder of a charitable foundation, teacher to students who actually wanted to learn, and someone who'd earned her place through strength rather than submission. The invisible dancer had become undeniable, and in a world built on power and fear and carefully maintained distance, she and Luca had created something rare and dangerous and absolutely real. They had created trust. Later that night, back at the penthouse, they stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city. Luca's arms were wrapped around Mira from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder, both of them comfortable in the silence. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Mira thought about everything she'd lost, the invisible safety of obscurity, the simple life of just surviving, the ability to pretend that the world's darkness didn't touch her. Then she thought about everything she'd gained, a partner who trusted her completely, a place in a world that had tried to exclude her, the strength that came from choosing courage over comfort. No regrets, she said firmly. Not a single one. Good, because I have a question to ask you. What kind of question? Luca turned her around to face him, and Mira saw something vulnerable and hopeful in his expression. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The kind that requires an answer, he said, opening the box to reveal a ring that was beautiful without being ostentatious, just like everything else about the life they'd built together. Mira Vance, will you marry me? Will you be my partner, not just in this world, but in every possible way? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that trust isn't weakness? It's the greatest strength we have. Mira looked at the ring, at Luca's hopeful expression, at the life stretched out before them with all its danger and possibility and promise. She thought about that first night at the gala, when she'd taken his hand despite every reason not to. About the choice she'd made then and every choice that had followed. And she made one more choice. Yes, she said, watching joy transform Luca's face. Yes to all of it. As he slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility, Mira thought about how far they'd both come. From broken people hiding behind walls to partners brave enough to be vulnerable. From trembling hands to steady trust. From survival to something that looked remarkably like happiness. The city glittered beyond the windows, full of the same dangers and power struggles that had nearly destroyed them both. But inside the penthouse, in the space they'd created together, there was only light and trust and the simple knowledge that they'd chosen each other against impossible odds. And they'd keep choosing each other, every day, for as long as they both lived. Because in a world ruled by fear, the most revolutionary act was love. And Mira Vance and Luca DeSantis had built a revolution. One dance at a time, at a